Frankly put, I think that Falcons have shown me enough, and you've had many opportunities at this point. Zonic's position is just unjustifiable.
Right, Snake and Banter has returned. Our guest is a return guest. It's obviously a co-host of mine on the show, Overcommed, which actually, I'm glad I actually remembered that. I myself sit there sometimes and go, is it outcommed or overcommed? And I can't know. But actually, in some ways, it's an appropriate name, Overcommed, because any show I'm on, we will talk too much about most topics in some ways, you could say. So it's and that's not why you came up with it, but it just fits. If the shoe fits, wear it. So
I mean, it actually kind of is why I came up with it.
Oh, okay, fair enough. All right. Implicit shot across about the king. Okay, I see how it is. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's all right. Could just be called the Emperor Thorin has no clothes. And then you all sit there and I go, it's a bit weird. Sometimes I am a bit of a fraud. You're like, yeah, I thought you were a fraud. That's why I came up with oh, cheers. Right, thanks. Anyway, obviously, just like that shot there, we're starting the show spicy. That's how we do it now on these shows, thanks to Monty. So, Maui, let's start with the bad. And what is bad right now?
Well, we're recording this immediately after the two first quarterfinals have been played at PGL Cluj. And so I think there's an obvious team to pick for them having a bad time. One is worse than the other in terms of the loss and the poor quality that was shown in the loss. I mean, frankly put, I think that Falcons have shown me enough, and you've had many opportunities at this point. And I just think that they as a whole are a bad point. And my take regarding them is at this point, Zonic's position is just unjustifiable. It's just been unjustifiable now. I think that has probably gone on for quite some time. I mean, he's been with Falcons, by the way, for 2 years and 3 months. Over 2 years, and he's had multiple rosters, which at many times we felt like we're going to be competitive. I thought the snappy one with Simple was going to show a little bit more. I mean, I thought that obviously this lineup by now would have shown something, even in the interim with Dexter, Nico, that lineup. I mean, the fact that they only lifted one tier 1.5 trophy, that's just not good enough. And I'm not trying to even diminish what Zonic did in the past. I mean, he's the most successful coach that we've ever seen, and he's won with 2 different lineups in terms of the Vitality lineup, and of course the Astralis one that was era defining. And I feel like for those kinds of teams, he probably makes a lot of sense as a coach. I think that he probably has a great tactical eye for the game, can probably still bring a lot in terms of just making sure that they stay up to date on nades, meta, tactics, any of that. I mean, I don't doubt his qualities in that regard, because as Astralis has talked about in the past, I mean, he was a part of helping make them as dominant as they were, with all of the ways that he and Glaive and the rest of them improved utility, and how even at times Zonic would just IGL for a whole map during practice to let them try different things out, or if people are taking the day off or whatever was happening. I have no doubt about that. I even think that he is probably a great coach when you have that type of personnel, where you have an Astralis team where everybody's out to prove something. Even when he had a Vitality team that was also out to prove something to win their first CSGO major, for ZywOo's major, for Apex as an IGL. But when it's something about this, when it comes to Falcons and the bloated paychecks and the fact that everybody's coming in thinking that they're a star practically, and he can't connect with them. And I actually think there was a part of a point to Kassad's take on our last Hot Take show, saying that he should just be there because Zonic always addresses them with, I think this, I think that. It's just not demanding enough of a team that needs an ego check extremely badly, and has needed one for a good 8 months now. I mean, I think Kyosuke has shown incredible raw talent, but he is one of the most error-prone players on a top 5 team. He probably is just flat out the most error-prone player. Because even if I look at any of the quote-unquote bad players on teams like, say, Spirit, I don't really think that Tanir is making drastic mistakes in man-up situations. I don't think Zontix is either. I don't think that anybody on Furia is doing that. I mean, I can look at all of these elite teams, but I just think that Kyosuke really is one of those he giveth and he taketh type of players. And at this point, if he hasn't learned after 8 months of playing tier 1, when's it going to happen? And on top of that, when is m0NESY going to learn? That's another really disappointing aspect for this. That m0NESY can put up great numbers, but I can just tell when people want to talk about him as being this, excellent, great player and everything like that, when they're scoreboard watchers or they're people that are actually watching the game, because he's also just sacking rounds left and right. It's really just ridiculous. On, for example, Dust 2, and they were playing against Paravision today, the way that it's a 2-on-1 situation after Nico dies, and I think it's Nota or someone coming up from CT spawn on the 1v3 retake, and then for the bomb is planted short side for m0NESY, and he gives up a peek for no reason at all. You have to play. These are just, when people say that teams have bad fundamentals, they have a lot of different ways to tackle that, but this is just like that is by and large just a fundamental error that you only really see people nowadays like m0NESY and people on Falcons make. Like it's just so wildly inexcusable, and someone just needs to be held accountable at this point. And I wouldn't mind if it's zonic at this point. Zonic is my #1 person that I think should be removed from Falcons. And I'm even just going to say today, like, I don't want to wait for another major cycle. You had a major cycle. You had 4 major cycles, as a matter of fact. You failed to qualify for multiple majors under the Falcons banner. So when is enough enough? And when is it time for Falcons to say, we need to get this guy out of here? We need to bring in a guy that's a little bit more ready to just lay it down. Because to me right now, I just feel like Zonic's a player's coach. I think he's just a guy that recognizes if he gets on the good side of Nico and Kixan and m0NESY and Kyosuke, that, all the nice shoulder rubs are going to get him pretty far to make sure that they say, he's not the problem. We don't know what the problem is. Like, no, there's a problem, and people need to be held accountable at this point.
It's coming out firing. Okay.
He is, but it's just correct, isn't it? Like, it's just right. I mean, it's hard to have the same sort of negativity towards Kixan in terms of maintaining discipline. That's kind of what Zonic's here to do. Like, he should be the disciplinarian, and yeah, he's not really running Counter-Strike Teep, the way Maui's describing it. It's a rub and tug, really. It's nothing. He's not really keeping control of these players, not really setting the lines and the boundaries. And the clear example is that m0NESY case from today. Never should have peaked that. Like, never in a million years. Never should have given himself away. And it's misplays, and that's these sorts of situations where you should be seeing, players getting completely called out, reamed out, really, just given the hairdryer treatment, as we used to call it with, I think Alex Ferguson was famous for it in football. Like, these are the sorts of things you should be absolutely annihilating players for, but they are playing buddy-buddy in a lot of ways. And then you see the outcome is, it's the most ill-disciplined team in CS. It's why we have all the screenshots. It's why we see them losing winnable games. So we see them getting absolutely punished by a Jame-led Paravision that is far inferior to them in terms of actual firepower. There's no two ways about it. It's not minced words. Paravision has some exciting young players who are capable of little sparks of magic, but they don't have the roaring inferno that this Falcons has as far as talent and firepower. So the fact they lose that game is just a testament to Zonic's inability to instill discipline into this side. And even a coach change, I'm not sure who you're bringing in that's going to do a lot better. But at this point, someone has to be held accountable. Yes, someone has to be lined up in front of the firing squad. It just has to be Zonic, yes.
By the way, I don't actually even hate this take. Even though I've been a Zonic defender for a long time, a lot of it was based on things like, I'm sorry, it's just the nature of how leverage works in life, that when you've accomplished a lot or you have a high status, the rules don't apply to you in the same way. In the same way as, you get fired if you do badly in this way. That doesn't count if you've succeeded many times before, especially if you've done what Zonic did, which is you innovated or revolutionized part of the industry. It's a bit like Blade, right? I think almost any other coach right now, if they had a squad like NAVI, would be told that you should have made cuts two roster moves ago, but we give Blade extra time because Blade's a genius and he's just done things that no one ever done. And so the joke is NAVI could probably run it until the end of the year, boys, without a roster move still, and he'll get sort of kid gloves treatment compared to any other coach who'd just be told, mate, you should probably be fired as well as these players that you need to replace. Well, the problem is, though, I do agree, though, that has now ended for Zonic, right? He's now had over a year of a real version of this roster. After the Snappy one, and here's the other thing as well, I'm just going to put this out there, I'll be totally biased but honest about it. I am also always going to be slightly burned by the fact that I know Snappy only joined that project to get Nico, and that when they finally got Nico, they told Snappy, you can fuck off, mate. It's wait a minute, then same with you then, Zonic, mate. Why do you just get to stay around forever, mate? I think that's just really unfair. So even though I'm not saying they even would have been better with Snappy, I still just feel like it leaves a bad taste in my mouth that other people people get treated like that, or the Dexters of the world, where it's like, so I can be the MVP of a tournament, and then instantly I don't even play in the team anymore. What are we doing? So I'm sat on the bench forever. Like, look, I get that on paper, all these moves make sense to do, but again, you're treating some people in your org harshly, and then one guy just gets to skate and have a million excuses. And I'll even put it out there like this: there's even angles I think people haven't even thought of that I'm sorry, zonic is to blame for. So I'll give you one right now. Right, if you want to go to Keisuke as a player, I'll do the Molodoi at the major thing all day long. He's still really inexperienced. He's actually in a team that's above his level. Normally, this sort of a player would never be put in the circumstances where you have to play playoffs every event. Imagine instead, just like for Molodoi, if Molodoi was on, not Amcal, but let's say Molodoi was on foot, no one would be hitting on Molodoi right now. He wouldn't even be in a position to choke a big quarterfinal. He'd just be like barely making playoffs or not making playoffs and looking really good. Similarly, if Keisuke right now was on, pick any squad, Paravision or something like that, he just wouldn't have the same pressure on him. But here's the problem. That's not to blame Keisuke. He can only be as experienced as he is. And actually at the moment, unfortunately, this is where people like Donk have broken everyone's brains. He's not only having like rookie problems in playoffs, he's having really extreme rookie problems in playoffs. People like Donk bizarrely just have never had it. I don't even understand it myself. He's the rare outlier. But here's where that doesn't work for anyone except Keisuke. If you're zonic, mate, you knew he was a rookie. You knew he'd never played Tier 1 lands. Like, you chose to take your career and your whole reputation that everyone was wanting to hate on you, and right in the middle of everyone hating on you and going, this is your last chance, Sonic, you decided, right, my final move will be to put a complete rookie into my squad and then rely on him to have mad firepower. And the reason why that is egregious is because, one, you didn't have to do that. You had an unlimited bankroll and loads of players that would have joined the team instead of this guy. Secondly, I'll always say this point now that I know Keisuke sadly hasn't yet come through in the playoffs. You also didn't have to do that move. You could have just kept Monacy. You had Monacy, Nico, Megas and fucking Tessus and worked it out with the real roles and played real CS, because that's the last thing about this. Surely the whole excuse for signing Keisuke was that he might be the next Donk and he might be just that good immediately that it doesn't matter that the roles are fucked up. It doesn't matter that Tessus is going to be in a bad spot because Keisuke is going to bring this firepower. And the problem is he just doesn't bring it in the playoffs right now. So that means the basic condition of signing him hasn't worked. It's completely failed. And in doing so, the downside that was always going to offset signing him is just the downside. That's all you've got now is the downside. It's just you've got all these problems with SS and the rest of the squad. And then lastly, I'll just put this out there, which is, since you have, it's not anymore just a meme of people making screenshots. You really do have one moment in every big series which is like comically bad. Now, the problem with that is you are the coach, bro. So I'll just tie this to something we said on Hot Take Point Made and then pass it over again, which goes like this. One thing I think actually that kassad sort of accidentally backed into about zonic that I hadn't even thought of myself is, it does seem almost like even when he talks to his team or the media, his first condition is like, I have to like protect my job or something, which is weird. Like, no, this is your dream job, mate. When it's your dream job, you swing for the fences, you go for it. And then if you fail, you go, well, at least I did it on my terms. It doesn't even feel like that now. Now it actually feels like, put it this way, the Zonic I heard stories about in Vitality in Astralis wasn't like this at all. Like I heard stories in Astralis, by the way, guys, that he was battling some of the biggest names in Counter-Strike and telling them like you're doing it wrong, basically, and having arguments with them. And remember, in Vitality, this is real. He not only benched Dupree, before he benched Dupree, the whole reason they won the major, he basically told Dupree, you don't get to be Dupree anymore, mate. You just play as like a basic bitch entry and you don't do any of the shit you want to do. Like, and I can tell you, it was implied Dupree was not happy with that. Like, he didn't come to Vitality to do that. He came to Vitality to be like the second or third best player and win the major. So actually, it seems like in his past teams, he was willing to be the authoritarian and to be the person who's like, this is not acceptable. It doesn't feel like that in Falcons. In Falcons, it feels like he's on some like, you know, those parents you see in America, Maui, where it's like their kids misbehaving and climbing all over everything. And then you look at them and instead of them going like, sorry, I'll say something, they look at you as if like, what can I do? They're crazy out there. And you want to go, you're their parent, you lunatic. You're the only person in this room who can do something about that. You can tell your kid right now, get the fuck off that thing, stop harassing that guy. Like, you don't get to just go, well, what can you do? Because in this scenario, I agree with you guys. All these interviews where Nico and Zonic are just sort of like, yeah, we're just fucking up like really basic rounds. Then someone has to get fired. I'm sorry, like, that's a decent excuse if you're fucking some small little squad. By the way, here's why I'm also not going to accept it, Zonic, because I don't accept that from Magic when he says it. I give Magic the fucking business every time he does a shit excuse. So actually, at this point in time, even though I have mad respect for Zonic, and by the way, I even agree with you, I actually think even if he got fired, there's loads of other teams should probably pick him up, maybe Team Liquid or someone. There's plenty of squads where if he's willing to go back to the old Zonic, I think he could be an excellent coach again. But I agree. At this point, not only do they need changes in the roster, they probably need to change the whole structure, mate, because they've had quite a lot of time with this core. It's not like a fresh team either. And if I'm going to hate on, FaZe and MOUZ and NAVI for their cause not working, I have to go harder on fucking Falcons. They have unlimited money. Oh yeah, and I made this point, a hot take point made, but the last one is this. Nobody is allowed to do that excuse anymore of like, yeah, but the roles. zonic had 3 straight roster move transfer windows where he chose not to sign a great anchor after benching Magus, one of the best that ever did it. So you chose that, zonic. I didn't do that, mate. I would have begged you 3 times in a row to do that, and you refused to do it. So at this point in time, you chose this roster, which means you chose these results, and you coached these results too. At that point, I would just flip it the other way. If there's anyone left defending zonic, here's what I want to know. Why shouldn't he be fired? Just give me one reason. Why shouldn't he? Well, that's all of us hated on, right? We're all probably blocked on Twitter now.
It just needed to be done. It just needed to be done. I feel like, I felt like we were actually pretty reasonable about Falcons and just, setting expectations and everything, but they have just failed to deliver one too many times now. It's just too bad.
I'll even give you one last thing as well. Here's why I think we have to now be harsh on them. Because you know what I do on loads of my shows, I even did it in the last month. I go hard as fuck on MOUZ, mate, for being not able to win the big games and win tournaments. Mate, MOUZ actually has a better floor than fucking Falcons, who I think has way better players. And when I look at MOUZ, I don't blame Cyclone, because I go, where's your fucking Monacy on Eco? This guy has Monacy and Eco, and he still doesn't do it. So it's like, bro, if I'm going to hate on fucking MOUZ, I have to hate on NAVI. I have to hate on fucking Falcons too. So, no, I'm with you. Now, we can actually use that to springboard into another topic, though, which is, despite the fact, as I said about MOUZ, the difference is no one believes MOUZ will ever win a tournament. They just think they'll make the semis and the final. The problem you're supposed to believe with Falcons, is why everyone's supposed to care, is not only do they have excellent players, but there's that upside. They can beat Vitality, they can beat all the teams in theory in CS. So we're supposed to believe if everything goes great, they can win a Tier 1 S-tier trophy. Something that, remember, I'll just remind people, even people like Mongols did it, fucking G2's bomb-ass lineup, all these teams eventually have the one tournament where it all comes together. So far, never happened for Falcons. Well, on Polymarket, the traders say, the question is, will Team Falcons win an S-tier event? Listen to this. Not even this season. In the entirety of 2026. Now, the traders say, yes, there's a 74% chance, according to Polymarket traders, that during this year, at some point, Falcons will win an event. Now, I will just point out, technically, this would also include if they make a roster move. We can't, anticipate that. Now, it is the whole year, right? I feel like just this question existing is almost an indictment of Falcons, because when you have that roster, like I say, I would have thought a more reasonable one was, will you win one this season? That should be the expectation, but just the entire year. So, KingT, the whole year. Do you agree? Do they get it? Would you go against them? What do you think?
Right. Yeah, it's tough to predict against it. That's the problem. Even with this iteration of the team, zonic still coaching, all the sloppiness, all the mistakes, they can just put together a run at any given moment. It is still Nico, Monacy, Kyosuke. That would be my pick still, despite all of what we said, especially because it's the entire year. You run it for the entirety of 2026. Yeah, I'd pick them to actually manage to make it happen as a one-off. In the same way we saw, as we talked about, G2, all these other rosters, they can just have it happen. There's those fluke occurrences, yeah, they're possible, especially if Vitality, aren't in attendance or take the foot off the gas the way they did in the second half of last year. So yeah, my pick actually would be with the people on this one. It's more likely than not.
I would also probably lean towards it happening because, first and foremost, they can make changes. I don't see this iteration of the roster winning an S-tier event, but I find that the calendar has it has a handful of 8 team events that are technically considered S-tier. They could easily walk up into some kind of World Thunder Pick kind of world championship event, or there's this event that's called the Forge of Legends that's happening later this year. No one even knows what these events are really going to be like, and they could also just win a Blast Rivals format to me is the perfect kind of event for Falcons to win. When looking back at even the Snacks led G2, the 2 tournaments that they won with Snacks at the helm were the abridged 8-team tournaments, and at that point you only need to win, I think, about 4 series. If you win your first 2, you get berth to the semis, then you win the semis, and then you win a grand final. Winning 4 series in a row is completely feasible for Falcons. In fact, they almost just did it in this event where they went 3-0 through the Swiss stage, albeit against some weaker opposition, and then they just needed to win one more. Yeah, they can win 4 series in a row, and that day might just happen. And also, they might just get a tournament that is missing 1, 2, 3 other elite teams. That seems to be sprouting up a little bit more as there's a bit more overlap in the calendar.
I will just say this. I do agree generally, like they should be able to get it. Especially because, as you said, the whole year, it's all the events. Also, there's two different types of ways the team can improve. They either literally make a player roster change, or they make the coaching change and they find a coach that suits it. I actually made this point years ago. I forget if it was in G2 or Falcons at the beginning with Nico, but I even made this point ages ago, which is if this guy in every team's going to have like, oh, the team never quite gets there, well, then eventually you actually have to almost do the extreme move of like, you know what, Nico, you pick the coach, mate, and if it doesn't work, you're both fired. There you go. Like, I can't be fucking arsed with this, mate. Like, I've seen this happen in every bloody team. The guys, what, every IGL and coach just can't play with him. Well, then eventually it's just you, mate. You know what I mean? Like, you're the common trend here because the other people are people like Alexi B, Zonic, and fucking, like, the Goat Stars. You've had them all, mate. They just don't work with you. So, with that said, though, I think it probably does happen. Here's the sad thing. If you could make a restriction to this circumstance, like it was, will this 5-man lineup of Falcons win? I would actually be tempted to say go with the no and take the crazy odds, because here's why. They actually do have that style of play, which is just so fucking mentally fragile that they easily can lose every single tournament and blow every fucking playoffs. Like, it's crazy because it shouldn't happen. Like, you would even think by accident they'd have won a tournament by now, but there's almost like a logical reason they haven't, if you know what I mean. Like, it does make sense how they lose. Like, they do it repeatedly enough. They do like take turns choking in the big matches. So, but the problem is, like you guys said, since they have the bankroll and presumably the desire to be better, I imagine they just make a roster move at worst and then they win an event probably in the second season. That's why it being the whole year, I think, makes this easy to just pick yes. You just take yes on the 74%.
If it was for the first season, I think it'd be a really interesting.
That's a spicy one. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So, Maui, what is your bad point? Sorry,
no,
KingT.
I did my bad.
KingT, yes, KingT now. KingT, what is yours?
Yeah, so this is a take that's, I mean, it's unfortunately quite in vogue. I don't feel quite as smart and special for making this call, but yes, G2 have failed. That's just outright the reality of this situation. They have failed, and nobody is entirely safe from reproach, bar Heavy God. And I do have one thing to reproach him. It's just he's gotten a bit too much credit for being in the worst possible roles, terrible, despicable roles, despite basing everyone on T side for 3 kills, ignoring the entire T half. Yes, he does have the most despicable roles. But no, he still is fantastic for what he does. It's just a narrative problem. Matisse has moments, has also the opposite. I don't know what you want to call them, moments and then calamities. And then the rest of the roster, since coming together as this 5, it's been pretty trash. Even MOUZ, a guy that I've always been at bat for. I've always gone to war in his defense, explaining to people the kinds of fights he's having to take, the lack of util historically a G2 side will properly use to set up their openers. He's just not been good enough. I mean, there's a part of this where it's just he has to be the one taking some responsibility. Pushing through smokes isn't always an IGL's call. It's not always the structure of the round. It's not always what he should be doing, and he does it way too much and just takes cheap deaths. Some Pius is a bum. I don't need to elaborate. And Hunter has transitioned to IGL, and everyone wants to be like, oh, but he's transitioned to IGL. We have to give him time. It's like, you don't have time on G2. You just don't. You're supposed to be G2. So as I said, I've rebranded them. They are Gamers 2 until they make changes. You've reverted back to the old label, the one that won nothing, the one that was a Polish Tier 2 mix when Tier 2 CS was just cheating and gambling and match fixing. Like, I do not have any sort of love left for G2. This is an entire failure.
It's a topic where I've tried thinking what's the move for them, or what can the expectations even reasonably be, because I mean, I think their best player is Heavy God. Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. T side he gets a little bit more to work with, but on CT side it's tough for him. I just feel like there's 2 guys that I would probably consider replacing first. I mean, the first and foremost is obviously Sun Pius. I just think that I don't necessarily. I mean, I think that Klim, the guy that's on MIBR, is probably at this point a better option, where you could just work with somebody that's a little bit rawer and maybe yeah, he won't fit the structure immediately. He won't be Saw's best friend, who Saw's talked about how Sun Pius is like the best teammate ever or whatever. I mean, simply put, I don't care if Simple's a good teammate. I didn't even really care if Zywo was a good teammate. If they're doing everything that they're supposed to as oppers, then that's going to win you games. And Sun Pius is doing a lot of the teamwork aspects very nicely. I'm sure that he's calling to run certain setups. I'm sure he's calling to throw some flashes to help people. But I need him to shoot the gun. I need him to kill people that walk into his crosshair on a more consistent basis. And for MOUZ, on the other hand, It's tough because also I just don't think that the active CT spots were ever going to be good for him. He clearly looked best on G2 when he was playing all of the anchor spots when he was first brought into the role. And then he kind of just became sort of, for lack of a better word, I mean, he just kind of was a brain dead entry. He was just set in on those entry routes for set plays that Snax was calling. And to Snax's credit, he probably used MOUZ in the most efficient way that you possibly could, because he has not, in my eyes, I think that Mauisnake has developed more as a T-side space taker than MOUZ has in the last 8 months. So I feel like I'm seeing more signs of growth there than a guy that really has had longer now in tier 1. So that's a huge concern for me. I don't think I'd really change anything else. No, I just wouldn't. I think Mattis, Hunter, and Heavy got to show me enough, though.
Yeah, I'm actually with you, though, by the way. I do think that, in theory, Heavy God is the only one who doesn't get any blame. Like, I actually think he is playing actually above what you'd even expect. He's playing very well. He's just in his... I also think this is an example I made on Counterpoints when I talked about this topic, because I actually had a similar topic for Pimp. It's like, I'm kind of bored of this G2 now. Like, the joke is they're one of the teams where, in contrast to a team like a Falcons, actually every analyst has a soft spot for this team, because we all revere Son, think he does an awesome job. And you look at this roster, if you know you're going to lose people that can't be replaced like Nico and MOUISnake, this is a pretty decent remix, actually. You've sort of taken some nice pieces. So some of them are gambles, but they're like informed gambles or educated gambles, or ones that have like a shrewdness to them. Like, if people never saw Matisse and Fnatic, actually that was a steal Fnatic even got him. I was told by a bunch of people, like a bit like Wrinkle and Nip, they were just early, and otherwise he would have been in a bigger squad already. So I think when you look at some of the signings, they were totally fine. Obviously, quite early on, they had the breakout and won that Blast Rivals completely out of nowhere. The problem is, beyond that, they've done fuck all. Like, I just counted this up, right? Including the Blast Rivals event, they have played 9 LANs with this lineup, and the Blast Rivals is the only time they even cracked top 4. Right, that is terrible. If I'm going to, on all these shows, flame Falcons for not winning, and MOUZ for only making semis, and Aurora for not beating top teams, you do know they're all better than this team. Like, Aurora will fuck around and make a semi out of nowhere, mate. They don't beat that many top teams. By the way, here's one for you. You know, G2, the only top teams they've beaten was like Fury at EPL and then teams at Blast. That's it. Every other land, they don't even upset people if people don't know. And they lose the random games like Mongols with controllers at the major. Like, they also sometimes lose to lesser squads. So I also just, the upside basically isn't there. And I agree, if you go player by player, everyone can get their blame. I'm sorry, Sampaius has never ever actually come online. He's had brief moments where he showed flashes of looking like he's got it in him again, but consistently it hasn't been there. And as far as we can tell, it is almost like a Nepo signing. Let's just Saw believed him and wanted to give him another try. I don't hate giving him another try, but it hasn't worked. I'm sorry. At this point in time, you gambling to take any other offer. I even wonder at this point in time, by the way, I'll put this out fair for you. You know, that rumour was that when Passion UA signed Try, now, even though it's been disputed, NAVI was one of them, you know, there was that statement that 3 top 10 teams wanted him. I wonder if G2 was one of them, mate, because you might think that's silly if you're a fan who's only watched Try in like Imperial, but like, he might actually have more upside than some buyers right now, boys. Like, I wouldn't even hate that if you wanted to gamble on it. Then you go down the other ones. By the way, I'm sorry, I know people from NA did that thing where they adopted Malbs because he was like an M80 baby or whatever. At this point, the joke is he should be on M80 again. Like, he's actually back at that level now. Like, he is not the player he was when Nico and MOUISnake were here. And unfortunately, that whole take of like, it's Nico and MOUISnake are taking his space. No, it's the other way around. What you have actually learned is this. Him playing with Nico helped this guy like a motherfucker. Like, that made his game so straight. Because, by the way, Matisse isn't as good as Nico. So you can just see already the game doesn't work as well. And then also, that whole angle of he's just on bad CT spots. He's just bad on CT side. I'm sorry. It wasn't spots. Like, that, there is no Nico and MOUISnake anymore, boys. In theory, you could put him any spot you want. He's just never been a good CT player at this level, unfortunately. So, unfortunately, the Malbs one I'm out on. The Matisse one is just so inexperienced. I give him a little bit more time. I also think he's slightly underperformed. I think he's been given, by the way, some great resources in the team. And then lastly, on the Hunter one, it's just really hard to judge the Hunter one because I think the rest of the roster sort of failed. Like, it's not a particularly coherent team in that sense. So I do think you go back and you remix it completely, because one thing I will say is this. One, you do have sort, and you still have some. Notice, even if we're being cynical, most of us are going to keep at least 2 or 3 players. So just make a move. You've still got other pieces that can be good. I haven't totally given up on the Hunter one. And then lastly, I'll just throw this out there because I do think it has to be said. This is why, even though I don't blame Hunter and I don't blame Saw for this at all, they weren't the ones who made these statements. This is is why the CEO of G2 looked like at the time an absolute clown, and now he looks even stupider for those really stupid interview comments where he basically said that they could have kept Nico but chose not to, and that they don't want Simple. Well, you know what, mate? You sound like an absolute fucking idiot now, because if you had Nico, Simple, or Monacy, you would be in such a fucking mega position right now with these players. Even with this squad, like, let me take any of those 3 players and put them in this team right now, and I guarantee you we're getting some playoff runs. We'll maybe even fuck around and win it. Instead, now you look silly, because guess what? I'll put that context in the actual context of what happened afterwards. What you basically said, Alan DeLeon or whatever fucking CEO of G2 is, why the fuck would I want Simple or Nico? I'd rather have Sun Pius and fucking Matisse. Well, then you know what? Enjoy the results of Sun Pius and Matisse, mate. You chose that, apparently. I don't know that you even did, by the way. I even think some of that with the Nico one was just like bravado, and he didn't really have a choice if he stayed or went at that point in time. But you chose to do it, so I think you have painted your org into a bad spot. And then lastly, by the way, it's G2 esports. Like, if people follow any other esports game, I don't know if you know this, G2 would be a contender for biggest esports team in the entire world. Like, they're not even just a CS team, so the idea that they're like actually borderline irrelevant in tier 1 CS is a bomber. Like, think about even the last tournament that they had a decent run at the Krakow. They immediately just bent over and got sent straight out of the playoffs. They weren't even competitive. Like, that just sucks. I hate the whole thing, because actually, like I say, I'm not naturally a G2 here. I don't even dislike, even in theory, any of the players, but I'm also really bored with this roster. Like, it's just time to remix. Just do over, take a mulligan, put 1 or 2 players in, and let's fucking go again. Because you can't, by the way, maybe I'll end on this. I want to see if one of you guys have any thoughts on this. I also am just bummed out if I think of this squad for the rest of this season, mate. Like, what hope do I have for the rest of this season? Like, I can't really believe this team's going to fuck around and go to, like, semis of the major. They're not. They're just going to be, like, round of 6, round of 8, or not even make the playoffs. That's going to be their future, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, you mentioned that all of us would keep at least 2 or 3 players from this. I'm keeping 3, because for VRS reasons, I have to.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, if their moves were available to make 3 upgrades, I'd make 3 upgrades. It's just I wouldn't be able to maintain a VRS core, and that'd be just a bigger catastrophe that would, as 100 Thieves are about to find out, just isn't really recoverable.
True.
Like, when you're completely screwed again, even if there are lands, I'm sorry, it's just not that easy. But no, they are looking dire. And the other problem, this is an issue we're going to get into, I think, when I talk about MOUZ later. It's just right now, who are you going to go and sign? Like, you can make some panic callbacks. You can call Klim back on his loan if that's a part of your contract. It should be. If it's a loan deal, you should be able to recall that loan and take Klim back into the starting lineup. In terms of finding a rifler, you could pull in, plug in for MOUZ. You know, maybe you allow Matisse to be more like Fnatic Matisse, who's just a very hard entry opener, not as much of a half lurk sort of situation. There's maybe a rifler you like that you can find available somewhere. You have to make these moves, though, immediately. Or you have to wait till the end of the season for anything else that's potentially good to open up, because there isn't a lot just on the table right now. There isn't like last year when Spinx gets nabbed, you know, post Katowice. There isn't that player just sitting around, needs picking up, hasn't got great reps, or the org probably is asking for a little less than you'd expect. I just don't think there's any layups. So yeah, they're in a pretty ugly situation, all things considered.
All right, for my... Go on.
Oh, no, just to revitalize their CT side a little bit, I did notice that MOUZ, he took back a couple of the anchor spots, and I think it was Hunter that moved to some of the connector ones, but it just is like... Yeah, I mean, I think it actually fits both of those guys a little bit more, because then Hunter gets to go, you know, call for rotations or call for help and things like that. You know, he gets to dictate more of what's happening on the map. Like, I think Mirage has got to be an example of this. I think MOUZ is back at A, for example. I'm pretty sure he is. He's back at anchoring A, and but it's just one little piece of a G2 that is still whelming.
Right, okay, what I'm going to pick for my bad, and it's actually quite key, I've picked this one as bad, not ugly. Everyone's done the FaZe topic to death, so I'm going to make it specific. I actually think what is bad, and it was something that Kassad hinted at on Hot Take Point Made, I believe, is it's specifically that it looks like FaZe has actually ruined Frozen. Like, this player, because remember, here's the difference. Twist chose to come back after all the bad. Carrigan just chooses to stay for whatever, right? If you're Frozen, the story goes, based on, like, reading between the lines and comments, that, like, he had the offer from NAVI, he could have gone there, but he chose to stay out of loyalty in FaZe, and I'm sorry, he's actually, it looks like being fucked by that, because not only has his level mildly gone down, and by the way, here's what sucks about that. During the entire time he was in FaZe, he was one of the most consistent players they had. Like, the flow of his game in 2024 was mega. In 2025, even when the team sucked, he was one of the best players almost every game they ever played. By the way, they could 100% go out in stage 1 of that last major if he didn't actually fucking smurf in some of those like nuke games, for example. Like, they would just be out of the tournament. There would have been no playoff run. And so he stayed and put himself in this scenario. And the worst thing is, let me just put it in context for you guys. Remember, Twists has won Grand Slams, he's won majors, he's come back to FaZe for whatever reasons, right? If you're Frozen, you still didn't win a major. You didn't win the fucking Grand Slam, mate. Like, you came to FaZe to win these things. Frozen right now is 23 years old. He is someone where if he is in a playoff team, he is a guaranteed top 20 player every single year. He should actually be putting together sort of like a poor man's Rops career, like an epic career where you go from top team to top team to top team. You're always contending. You yourself have the chance to win an MVP if you win the event. His time in this last year, now a bit of FaZe, is so depressing. And I actually sort of agree with the kassad take. I think it was him who said it, which is if you ever look at him in their team now, he also looks like he's like giving up, mate. Like, it looks like it's finally gotten to him and that he realises, like, it doesn't matter how well you play in this squad, mate. You don't get to go to the playoffs. You don't get to win the event. And at the end, you get no EVPs, you get no hit. And by the way, there's the final thing as well. You won't be HLTV top 20 if FaZe keeps this roster. Like, you will just be a good player on a bad team. And spoiler, that's a shit spot to be on. Shout out my boys, Blame F, Flit, etc. It sucks being the good player on a bad team. You never get any of the individual credit because you have to get a certain placing before you can get on those lists. So I want it specifically to be about Frozen, boys. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a best case scenario. He's doing the Rops 1 year too many. You know, he spent 1 year too long on the MOUZ, kind of gave up, half-assed a bit of it. Slumped his way into 19th in the world, I think he was, on HLTV's ranking, then moved on to bigger and better things. That's the best case scenario, though, for this year. That's how it feels, at least to me, because I wanted that major run to have some element of truth about it, right? Not to be a complete work of fiction, a complete lie. We've seen so far this year it was pretty much entirely fake. There was nothing to it that ended up translating particularly well. Brokey's still Brokey. Twist and Frozen seem to have regressed both individually, whilst Jacob also hasn't taken a step up and Carrigan's still getting out cold. So nothing that was good there is manifesting. Not even the parts we thought we could rely on beyond that major last year. Nothing's come through. So this is a team destined to just sink down the ranking and potentially be out of invite range by the time the second season comes around. Because I don't see them winning almost any games at big events. Loaded with teams as we are, they're not really heavy favorites going into any series with the current form they're showing. 16 teams right now at every event. Can you name 6 you think FaZe are favored against? I think it's tough. I think it's actually really tough. You just look at the top 16. They've been that dire so far that I agree. This is the worst possible situation for Frozen's career. The best case scenario, again, is he only loses 1 year to this. Maybe even he gets rescued at the halftime break, in between seasons, someone comes along and pays for his buyout. Because, there's a lot of teams who are probably right now looking down a similar sort of similar barrel to like a Falcons.
Bro, just remix the one before. I'll take him to Navi tomorrow, mate, on both sides. Just do that deal instantly, please. Come on.
So many teams who are just not making the deep runs that could potentially fork out the cash. I mean, MOUZ isn't one of them, but he'd love to be back there, wouldn't he?
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I feel like if FaZe don't make they're going to Atlanta, which is a really softball competition compared to whatever Astana looks like it's going to be, or really just any regular S-tier event. I mean, by HLTV ranking, they're the number 2 team attending that event right now. I mean, it's Vitality is 1, then them, then Navi, then Astralis, then Foot. And if you're not getting through to the top 4 when, say, the level of competition is probably going to end up being Astralis or Foot. No hate to either of those teams. I think they're both on the come up. I think they both actually have shown me a lot, and I am hopeful for them. But come on, if FaZe Clan doesn't defeat those guys, I mean, they've already technically lost to Foot at CAC last year, so it's actually a pretty familiar. Now. Yeah. So actually, yeah, totally. So, but if they can't elevate to at least top 4 in that one. You need to pull the plug in a couple different ways. And yeah, I like the angle of it, that it's not just the same old FaZe conversation, that it's about Frozen. And yeah, I mean, I feel like that kind of happens to players, namely, who are some recent ones? I'd say Yimpad and Bit are 2 examples of that. Guys that they thought they were going to maybe leave to Falcons, but then it never really happened, or some better team in general. And then they sort of carry that with them for a while as they just kind of drag their feet on their respective rosters. I almost feel like Frozen's doing that right now, which is really disappointing because he was a guy that I think I made a take 2 years ago that this guy was going to be a top 5 rifler every year for the next, I don't know how many.
I mean, he
years.
could
It was hot
be.
take point, man.
It's totally
It was like,
plausible take.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was it was like 3 years of being a top 5 rifler in a row from that point on. And I mean, I would still even make the argument from the eye test and from the individual level of play that might still even be possible.
Yes.
But if he's going to put this level of play forward, then I can't even really stand up on that argument anymore for what I think is the 3rd year of the take. But yeah, I mean, it's just such an awful way to waste a guy's prime because he was good a month. Practically, he was good 2 months ago, and then suddenly he's just fallen off a cliff. That he was. I mean, he dragged FaZe down a lot. I mean, they dragged him down with them, but he was the worst player in that Astralis series by rating. And eye test wise, yeah, he was just not really connecting.
Yes. I'll even say it finally as well, by the
yeah.
way. He's even a guy where I've never even heard a single murmuring. He's like a bad teammate or like toxic or something. It also just seems like a plug and play. Put him in any team and this guy should be good. Like, that's why it's a bomber. Go on then, Maui.
Well, I mean, I was going to say that. I mean, usually Frozen would eat Astralis for lunch, and you could actually eat a brand new lunch because we are, in fact, sponsored by Factor, where you can go to their website at factormeals.com/snake50off, and you can get 50% off and free breakfast for a year. And Factor meals are just, I mean, if you're a busy person, especially, you're darting around, whatever you're doing, don't have time to always get groceries, don't always have time to cook yourself a meal, you can get all your macros through Factor, and you can get a variety of different types of meals if you have different dietary restrictions and if you want them to be tasty. There's so many different ways to customize it. You can get lean proteins, you can get various vegetables, whole foods, healthy fats, all of that kind of stuff. They actually don't use seed oils if you're really concerned about that kind of stuff, or artificial sweeteners. And these are meals that are going to fit your schedule. They're going to make your life way easier, and you can actually stay really on the ball with any of your sort of caloric goals, high protein goals. All of that stuff is right there at your fingertips. So why not upgrade what you're eating with Factor? And thanks to them for sponsoring us. Be sure to visit their website at factormeals.com/snake50off. Just check them out at the very least. See if anything fits in terms of what you're trying to do with your diet.
Yes. I can say as well, I actually have had Factor meals and they are good. Like, one of the coolest things is they never freeze the meal. It comes like chilled. And that way it's not like wrecking the profile of the food. It's still super legit. The ingredients are good. Okay, let us move on then. And we will do the good section now. So KingT, what is good at the moment?
Yeah, what's good is I've alluded to it. I've done entire segments on my own shows talking about this, like in theory, and now I'm finally able to say we're reaping the rewards. Is that the scene is so loaded? I mean, obviously, it still feels like Vitality are going to win everything, but that we're so loaded beyond the elites, like in terms of teams vying for those playoff spots, for top 10 in the world sort of status, that we just get bangers long before we get to playoffs. And sometimes in the IEM case, we regret the fact that this was not done on a stage. Of course, talking about the G2 Spirit game, I could have had that on stage, that 2-1 series. Just at PGL, I felt like we had a lot of really strong series that were playoff worthy. NAVI Aurora, Furia Falcons, Foot Parivision, NAVI Mongols was surprised to me. I thought, honestly, Mongols would look flat again. They didn't. They were actually kind of good. Furia Foot. These are all series that have gone deep, that have been testing, that we've seen interesting styles clashing. That's another great part of it. We have really different stylistic teams. Hooksy's T-side, which is 50 to 60% just gambling on crazy ideas and seeing if they come off. You've got the Na'Vi T-side, which is like 15 flashbangs, 2 people die, just so Soma can get 2 kills. Like, there is very distinct styles at play here that we can see manifest over and over again as these teams match up. And it's something we get to see all event long. Because once we get to the playoffs, we then get the other questions. Like, now, who's going to lose to MOUZ in the round of 6, the round of 8? How are Vitality going to crush MOUZ? Or how are Vitality going to match up with the Falcons this time, with a Fury? We're just loaded with good matchups. I think that's a really fun thing to watch as a spectator from the groups onwards.
The level of play right now is just absurdly high. I mean, I know we get down on some of these teams for not having the superstars to push their talent over the edge, but I'd say quality of Counter-Strike day by day is almost, as someone that is hired to work in the space and watch CS on a daily basis, it's almost exhausting how many good rounds there are that we can pick from. I mean, frequently when we're doing these segments, the post games, we usually pull 1 or 2 good rounds, and I'll tell you, I mean, when I work with Yanko especially, I feel like by the end of it, sometimes we'll have 4 or 5 rounds that we all say these could be the rounds we highlight for both teams in the case of either of them winning, because there were so many good moments that they were able to execute a good mid-round plan, that an individual was able to find a gap in the defense, that the way they they executed onto a bomb site was just so clean and had this perfect flash that supported the push and didn't blind any of their own players. There's just, I mean, it's just constant. It's just constant, and you really see that. I mean, talent and work ethic, a lot of it is driven by incentives, that because the space has gotten to this huge point where average salaries of players are upwards of 10,000 a month, that you're getting so many people that are just dedicated hard workers. Frequently this space is weeding out those that kind of, I'm not going to say no one lucks their way all the way to the top, but they definitely can get there through unsustainable means, such as just purely dedicating themselves to their individual firepower, and then they don't really rehearse all of the other fundamental tactics, and then their teamwork breaks apart and things like that. Like, you know, the worst player that's on a top 10 team today is still, generally speaking, extremely competent when it comes to various aspects of the game, in a way that if you even go back to some of the more, I don't know, like legacy times of Counter-Strike, and you kind of really parse through it, I feel like there's usually a couple guys that were filtered out over the course of a season or two. But nowadays it's just rock solid. I really I can't praise it enough. And it's kind of been, for me, seeing, because the talk, I think 2 years ago was sort of that tier 2's getting good, tier 2's really good, tier 2's excellent now, and now it's just, yeah, tier 1 is a very vast field, and it is all good.
The main problem, I think, with all these discussions is when most people talk about the level of CS, they really just mean who is number one, do they look impressive, and can teams beat them? So the problem you've had for the last year and a bit is when Vitality wins everything, the perception is that means everyone else sucks. But unfortunately with that is, I'll just make this obvious piece of food for thought. If that was true, then the discussion would be Vitality is one of the most overrated teams of all time. That's not the discussion anyone's having. The discussion everyone's having is Vitality the best team to ever play Counter-Strike? I'm sorry, if they're the best team to ever play Counter-Strike, it's actually quite logical they could beat everyone else, no matter how good they are. Like, the joke is, for all we know, maybe the MOUZ team actually would have won like 4 events last year if there was no Vitality. There's a bunch of times where Vitality was the only one standing in their way. So I think if you go, but you have to remember there's different levels to the scene. And I think what you've accurately pointed out here is, once you get out of the contenders, where at the moment, yes, they should in theory all be able to beat Vitality, but they don't at the moment Vitality beats them. Mate, once you get outside of the contenders, the scene is fabulous. I don't think it's ever been as good, ever. Because I'll give you an example. Obviously, some of the more recent HLTV rankings, if you go to the HLTV top 20 now, some of the bottom half of the top 10 are mainly because, like, Paravision won an event, like FaZe was in the final of the major, so they were a bit boosted, right? But as a result, if you look at the HLTV top 10, right, positions 6 to 11 is Paravision, FaZe, NAVI, Mongols, G2 and Aurora. None of those teams, by the way, are a lock to beat the teams below them. They're not. In fact, the coolest thing is, I would say results at the moment, this is how you know we've got a great scene, is based on style and matchup. Like, I just gave you 6 to 11 there, right? I could pick teams from below them who could beat each of them, but individually based on the matchup. Like, if you go and look at teams like Astralis, Foot, NIP's way down there, mate, but you could put them against some of these. You even put like smaller ones if you just want the style aspect. How about teams like Arak and the new Passion New Ale be one mixing it up? 3D Max has its own distinct style. One of the problems I think in the past in CS was the top 4 to 8 teams were very good and had an identity and a style, but right, what you didn't have though was if you went teams 9 to 16, they were just playing very basic CS or bad CS. Or mate, as I just said there, you take a team like 3D Max, that's a very well-oiled team. I take a team like Foot, they're mega inexperienced, but they're playing a really fucking aggressive style that makes it work. You go down the list. So I actually do think now, and this is a sign that we're to mega scene, it's not about the ranking. Forget the number on HLTV. I want to know what personnel and style of team do we have, because it's now like MMA. You make the right style matchup and you can make a team that's 6th lose to the team that's 14th. Back in CS, back in the day, we had a pretty stratified scene where if you were in one bracket, you didn't lose to the teams below you. You beat the teams and lose to them in your bracket or you beat the ones above you. You don't. This is where, like I just said, NIP is the best example because they're at the moment 22nd. But I tell you what, you give me the ability to choose the match, I reckon I could get them to beat one of those 6 to 11 teams there. Even the ones that are good, like the Auroras, they still lose to some of these lesser teams out of nowhere. So, no, I'm with you. I think it's big. I think it's mega. I think it's mega at the moment. Okay, Maui, what is your good point?
Yeah, mine is in typical Maui fashion, I would say. I am gonna be talking about the fact I think we've actually done this before, almost as an ugly. On the flip side, that the Atlanta event is almost gonna be a cakewalk for the side of Vitality, and that's probably just gonna be in a way a free Grand Slam. But I think that the good flip side of it is the likelihood that Astana is going to be just packed out with teams. I think that it's really interesting to see in certain aspects. This is obviously self-serving in the way that, by the way, I am literally today working for PGL on their broadcast. So obviously that's the necessary disclaimer here. But I just think that I'm actually going to go off into a different section of it. That's just, I think the format is one of my favorite aspects of getting to see these teams play in these kinds of environments, because I'm going to even harken back to just how the bracket broke down for Cluj. I mean, generally speaking, I think that the 8 teams that made it there are they were generally speaking the best teams going into it, maybe with the exception of like the upset team or the surprise would probably be the Mongols with Cobra Zera getting in over perhaps one of, pick whichever you want, G2 Foot or Astralis. But I feel like seeing teams in this kind of format is better than watching them in what is the IEM format right now, where you just have this kind of, I guess, what is it, GSL, I suppose, but then you have to enter a 6-team quarterfinal berth / semifinal berth sort of thing. And in general, I would want to see more teams play in this format over the other. And of course, obviously, the selfish aspect being that Astana getting this level of competition, whereas last year it was pretty much just Spirit versus everybody versus the field. But now it's a much wider and more open tournament, even though we don't 100% know the confirmed teams. I think that in general, it's just better to see teams play in a BO3 Swiss format with an 8-team tournament playoff more regularly than a GSL 6-team playoff bracket that you're just kind of, I think it's just so awkward sometimes for viewers where they're just like, why is this team in the quarterfinals and this team in the semifinals? Why did they get to skip it? It's just a format that I feel like has totally run its course. Whereas the Swiss bracket, it just gets the best teams, especially with BO3s. Like, you can't really say that anybody fluked their way into any of the PGL playoffs.
Yeah, no, they've nailed it, and this is something I think is perfect for 2 reasons. This system, it's more fair than the GSL system in the sense that you want to make playoffs, you have to win 3 games. If you're going to not make playoffs, you're going to lose 3 games. That's just very simply how it works. And the faster you win those 3, the more break you get, the more time you get to study up on your opponents, the more time you get to watch other teams, watch your own games back. You just get rewarded for being good. And the other part of it is, of course, we have 8 teams in playoffs playing all quarterfinals. And it's all done in one day. It doesn't have to be. No, the major format's 2-2, and then the semis are done with the teams who play on the same day. But however you want to work it, you get a full quarterfinal berth. This is the biggest problem with IEM's sort of format. 6-team playoffs are ugly. They don't really... They don't reward the teams correctly for the way they play and the way they win and lose. In my opinion, like a seeding match, once you've already made playoffs, just doesn't have the same weight as a 2-0 game. Like, it doesn't really feel the same because you're not really playing for anything anymore in the most explicit way. You're not playing for playoffs, you're just playing for seeding, which is very different and doesn't, I think, build to the same sort of crescendo as we see in this format, where we see the 2-2 games. Absolute drama. Like, we actually get to proper win or go home mode, even for the teams that make playoffs. All of them have at some point got these big games. So I think they've done a better job in that sense. And they've proven that a best of 3 Swiss is viable consistently, despite PGL famous for their tech issues. Sorry to diss your employer, Maui, but that's a famous sort of storyline from the community. Despite all that, they've managed to do it over and over again. Why can't the ever so prim and polished Blast and ESL figure it out? It is a better format. We get better games, we get better teams. I think it is just the best way forward. And Astana getting that opportunity, Middle Asia, underrated region historically in terms of the visual aspect, especially of culture, like it's somewhere I've always wanted to visit just to look at. I think it's awesome we get in big events out there that are going to be actually banger and worth attending if you're like a big fan with that kind of money to spunk on watching CS events. Like, I'm really looking forward to this. It is going to be a banger.
If people don't know, what's mad is this exact format existed literally like 8 or 9 years ago. It's what Star Series used to use at StarLadder. They used to use a best-of-3 Swiss system into an 8-team single-limb bracket, which is exactly the same format. But what's bizarre is, because back then the perception was StarLadder was below ESL and well, it wouldn't even be Blast, but it'd be like fucking E-League or something like that, you know, because it was considered below them. People just didn't ever give it as much credit, whereas actually all the things you guys are describing is what I always liked about it. Like, basically, there are downsides, like, but then again, there are also downsides to the ESL one, as you just pointed out. Like, for example, I understand, we actually had this discussion on KingT's show, the Overcommed one. I understand, sadly, why they do the 6-team playoff brackets, where it means you only have 2 games a day and you never have 4 games, and you never have it runs overtime and people are in the arena for 13 hours. You don't have any of those down. But the problem is, though, as a fan of the game, of course I want 8-team playoff. I mean, one thing I think sucks, I've made this point before, is, I'll give you a quick sports example. I think one of the wackest things about American football is that because the game is so incredibly injury prone, you pretty much have to have the playoff system they have, where you just get to skip entire rounds if you're a bit like in the ESL system, if you just place higher in the league, because they want you to be rewarded for winning more games and not have more chance to get injured. But in an ideal world where injuries didn't exist, you'd want like the NFL playoffs to be like best of 5 or something. Like, you'd never want it to be a BO1. So if people think instead of sports like hockey or the NBA, one of the best features is that there is no skipping rounds. Like, if you're the best team, then yeah, listen, you're going to absolutely murder the first team in the first round of the playoffs. But that's a positive. That's where like legendary Michael Jordan dunks come from, or like some fucking great hockey player scoring a hat trick. You almost want that game because it's actually someone smurfing on the lesser team and showing you the levels. If anything, the problem with the ESL format is, if you're someone like Vitality, we never get to see you play that round of 6 game because you're always in the semis. We basically get robbed of a game where Rops or Ziwu could have like a fucking best game of the year and just smurf on some lesser squad. And then also, I'll just put this out there, another thing that I think sucks completely about that too is I totally agree with the seeding game in the ESL system. Bro, that is the lowest stakes game I have ever seen, because if you ever go back and look, I'm not even joking, I would struggle to even remember when the underdog ever won that match. It feels like every single time the real favourite in that match just wins it easily, and the underdog's like, well shit, I'm in the playoffs anyway, so lol, free roll, and they don't even play like out loosey-goosey, they just play a crap game, lose it, and go, it's all right, we're in the round of 6 anyway. It's actually, I agree, a 2-0 game in Swiss system is way more hype, because remember, actually you are incentivized to go hard as fuck on the 2-0 game, because the second you fuck that up is when the tournament gets trickier. That's when suddenly 2 matches later you're in the 2-2 game and you can go out of the thing. So I agree, the stakes are way higher. And then, as I say, I just think 8-team playoff, if you can make it work, I understand logistically it's hard. In theory, it is superior. It does provide extra, because it pretty way, if you ask me what would I want more games of, obviously I want more playoff games. They're the best matches to watch in the tournament. Also, I agree, even though, listen, Swiss still has a massive problem with seeding. It's very hard to fix it, actually. The difference, as we pointed out, and I've made this point a million times for the majors, I'll complain way less about Swiss at the majors if it's all BO3, though. Because at least in a BO3, I feel like genuinely it's in your hands still to win the game. And if you're the rare team that gets fucked, like I'll give you an example. You can actually say it happened to Foot here. If you get some insane draw of teams where they're all supposed to make it and you aren't, luckily that means logically you weren't an elite team though. That means you were just a team where you got a slightly unfair draw, and maybe with a better draw you'd have made playoffs and gone immediately out. You can't actually be like the 3rd best team and get 5 teams that mean you can't go to the playoffs. You know what I mean? So generally I do think as long as you give BO3s, I think the players figure it out after that, and generally it's going to be rare you get actual people getting fucked by the system. So I agree, in general it's good. And then finally on the whole Atlanta thing, sure, it's based on maybe VRS or something like that, this whole battle, why PGL got to win once, but that in itself is a positive. Remember, there was no factor like VRS back in the day. The reason ESL automatically won every single dispute ever is because they're ESL, and all the teams knew that's the team they're the people we've got to keep happy, because they're the ones that have all the fucking money and all the sick events. In a weird way, it's actually allowed PGL to be a disruptor, that they get to basically take not even just ESL's events boys. It'd be one thing if they took Pro League. They've taken an IEM. IEM is absolutely the fucking crown jewel of ESL. Like, that's actually a massive move that essentially the VRS system's enabled, as far as I can tell. I think that's a positive for the scene.
Another aspect of the IEM tournament format that I feel like sometimes gets overlooked by just everybody, or just kind of I've just almost been told like, oh, that's just the way it is at IEMs always, is that lower bracket B semifinal and lower bracket final happening on the same day.
That is whack. I can tell you as a better Maui, I hate that, because sometimes if you aren't at your PC, you just can't bet on the second game. It happens immediately afterwards. It's mad.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, for a reminder, for people that aren't really keyed into this aspect of how these work, on the final day of every group stage for the IEMs, they run. So what was it? What was it at the most recent one? It was MOUZ and Falcons. Both MOUZ and Falcons at IEM Krakow had to play a game against MOUZ beat FaZe, Falcons beat 3D Max, but then 6 hours later they have to play a series against each other. And players have talked about before, 2 BO1s in a day, that's one thing. That's a weird aspect of the major format, one that I think most pundits at this point would consider antiquated. I myself would say that it has very little place, mostly the BO1 aspect, but the 2 matches in one day, and to have 2 BO3s in the same day, it's just it's absurd. It's just absurd. It really has absolutely no place, because these teams, the way that they're structured, the way they work, I mean, the way they want to prepare, the way you get the absolute most out of a good coach, a good IGL, is thinking about your following match, is theory crafting, coming up with specific game plans, and instead you just kind of get these like messy brawls a lot of the time. And I'd say, the quality of CS in those games just always looks really low. Frequently, you just see blowouts in one direction or the other. And because I'm not trying to game plan around, or like, as a viewer, I hate watching it, because sometimes I watch it and the game just starts and I'm like, oh, this team is just really tired. Like this team just didn't have the stamina to play a game 6 hours later, and the other team had a better chance at it. I mean, was looking better at that stuff. It doesn't even always feel like we're getting 80% of either team that's actually in the match, or it just feels like it's completely lopsided. Yeah, I mean, I think it's been going on for at least 3 years with these IEMs, because I remember working them when I was doing ESL events, wondering why is this even happening? Actually, I'm pretty sure it's happening.
It's always been the way. Yeah, it was always this way, as far as I know, with this format.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes me out of the game.
But it's weird. The reason people don't complain about it, Maui, is because it's the low bracket, it's the last teams, and everyone thinks, well, you get one last chance, because you get like a third chance or whatever the fuck. Well, I know what you mean. It is definitely a downside.
Yeah, it just very frequently, the last game of the day is just really poor Counter-Strike in general.
Okay. Well, being as this is the good section, I'll remind you, gentlemen, this is the good section. Listen, everyone is always free on this show. I've done it myself a bunch of times. Like what was it when Tea Time did a good, like, adventure all in Asia, and I just shit all over it completely, like, you fucking pleb, it's not even good. What about the viewers? Anyway, whatever. So if you want, you can disagree and say it's bad, but I'm intentionally going to pick this as a framing for good, because normally this is a person who many times has to be in the ugly, and his team's in the ugly and the bad, and we're all banging on him. So you know what? I'm actually going to take a rare example of just trying to, in isolation, give you a good thing, which is, I actually think the player Spinx is in exactly the same position his team MOUZ is, which is, we all hate on him and talk about how overrated he is and not that good because of what he doesn't do when he gets to the semis or the finals. But what the point that I think MOUZ defenders are wanting made, which is a valid point, that's why I'm going to make it as a good now, is, bro, if you do put these guys who are like the gatekeepers of the elite against people who aren't elite, you see why they're in this position, or why they're always top form. Spinx is a great example. I'll totally admit, if you put him in against elite teams that are like championship material in a semi or a final, he probably won't have his best game. But I'll tell you what, just like MOUZ, if you put him against lesser squads or people with worse firepower mechanics, he will dominate them, like I saw in this match today. Like, this is a very good player. So even though it's certainly, there's plenty that you could complain about, as I say in many other shows, he'll be in the other category. For just today, bear in mind, I watched the match today. It was just a game, and NAVI's supposed to be, remember, a fucking top 8 team, a real squad that was at the major with a chance to win. So this is an example. Like, you have to say, as much as people want to set up the flaws of someone like Spinx, his strengths get him to the point that the flaws become manifest. He is actually still a really skilled player who can fucking dominate a CS match. Thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah, I ran the numbers today because I was actually curious about this. I was trying to look up the playoff stats for all the MOUZ players. I mean, I ended up just doing 3 of them because it took a little too much work. But of Spinx, Torji, and Xerxia, but Spinx specifically, because he's the man getting praised here. He's actually in playoffs. So, for the last sort of, since he joined MOUZ, it's like a 105 or 106, his rating.
Yes.
It's forgettable. It's a far cry from his group stage numbers, which are
I know where you're going.
12, 113.
It's the best in MOUZ, though, right?
It's the best in MOUZ. Remove vitality from those matchups. Just remove vitality. I don't need to remove everyone that MOUZ lose to, because MOUZ lose to 3 teams in playoffs. Spirit, Vitality, Falcons. There's the one FaZe exception. Everything else is those three
Yes.
teams. If you just remove Vitality, he's a 111. Like, all of a sudden, he looks like a star player again. He looks like he's worthy of HLTV top 10. It's all fantastic. And as I had to point out to people when I was having these debates towards the end of last year, we're doing all our personal top 20s, top 25s, and I had the audacity to put Spinx ahead of Senzu, despite HLTV rating. You know, all the imbeciles like, oh, the rating number's bigger. Like, did you see who Senzu played? Did you see who Spinx played? Like, I've got a feeling people just haven't kept track of this sort of thing. Spinx has gone against Vitality in like 40% of all his playoff maps since joining MOUZ.
That's outrageous. That is outrageous, yeah.
A ridiculously nice stat line. He doesn't face bums at all either. Senzu faced a lot of fucking bums, and despite that, forgettable numbers. Spinx faced just Vitality. I'm not even counting the Falcons, the Spirits. He faced those guys so much that his numbers tanked. In reality, yeah, he is still a star player. And sure, it is funny in that sort of little petty way that it's his old team.
That's also part of it, isn't it? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's really nice to hammer that detail home. Of
course.
That is Vitality that he can't quite get past, he can't beat.
Yeah.
But he's still a star player. It's why I said MOUZ have one star player, outright star player. It is Spinx.
Yes.
And we get a reminder of that today. Yeah, fantastic series.
By the way, I'll even admit totally, even though I'm a Spinx defender, don't worry, I get the same shard in front of KingT. In the same way as I will always be a little shit, and every time Nico doesn't win the major, I'll always go, how about that Carrigan here, Nico? Oh, there's a part of me does want to go, Spinx, that Mezzy guy is pretty fucking good, isn't he? Come on, homie. Look at this shit. He's giving you work every time. So I know what you mean. That is totally a viable angle. I get why I like that one. What do you think, Maui?
Spinx is just still extremely crafty with the way that he plays. I feel like his ideas of, especially on CT side today, of how to get back into rounds were really clever. I think that he always exercises a great amount of aggression at the right times for the team. I did, admittedly though, if people are really familiar with B-Trams and the stats that he puts together, the reason that he came up with the clawback bozo is he was watching my stream and I was like, dude, Spinx frequently though also does send it a bit too frequently on the CT side. You know, literally no reason in a 5-on-3, 5-on-4 situation to make an individual walk push. He's addicted to it. He does love to do it. But on the flip side, I actually think now that's on Vitality, that was a bit more of a problem, because you had a really class anchor in Magisk next to you. You had ZywOo as a great late round guy. And if you just assemble a really strong crossfire with these guys and just play like a normal bomb site setup, you're gonna be in great hands. But I think on MOUZ, sometimes they actually need a guy like that. I think actually the little bit of X factor that he brings, the little X random push that just kind of suits him but doesn't really even seem to suit anybody else, I think that's exactly what MOUZ needs, so that they aren't so cookie cutter and that they have an extra gear sometimes. And I think that he's been frequently just the best. I mean, basically versus all of the best teams in the world, he's just consistently the best guy on MOUZ. And yeah, he's definitely a star on their team. He's definitely an elite rifler at that. I find that actually in the big stage games, he seems to act more rarely than other guys on the team. Like I it's still the good point, but can't really talk about the good without comparing some of the bad parts. I mean, I almost can just frequently expect somebody like Exertion, Yimpat to just fall apart. Like they still do it years into it, whereas Spinx has found a way to generally always keep his head above water in big moments. So I think that he's continued. I think what's really impressive about it is that, when he was first playing with Snappy on, what was it? Was it Contact, or was it? No, you mean he was on that roster? Yeah, it was on Contact. I was kind of thinking, okay, this guy's kind of raw, pretty aggressive. Maybe it's also the Snappy system where he's benefiting a lot from just kind of the pacey calls that Snappy likes to do. But then he evolved on Vitality, where he fit a more well-rounded system, and now on MOUZ, he's just the X factor for them. So he's gone through many stages in his career. It's almost a shame that he hasn't lifted more trophies, because I think he's easily a person whose journey befits quite a bit of praise.
Oh yeah, by the way, there's also one other narrative angle I think does fuck him, which is not only did he get replaced in the team, but then he got replaced by a better lurker, so everyone gets to go, lol, compared to Rops. It's like, yeah, but that's the best lurker. We all agree that's the fucking closer of the year, whatever. So again, it's like the AWP discussion. Once you get outside of him, like there only are 3 or 4 more names, and Spinx is definitely one of them. And I'm also with you, by the way. Even though a lot of the choke things was when he was in Vitality, Mate, my boy Exertion's choking so much you don't even notice fucking Spinx choking, mate. That's half the problem. Torji just disappears in half the game. So I know what you mean. Like of the bunch, he's the least bad of the fucking chokers, put that way. He just gets beaten by Vitality, which I agree. Actually, people never. That's a good start, actually, KingT. I never thought of that. They do play Vitality in every fucking playoff bracket. It's nuts. 40%. Fucking hell.
It's something like 40%. Like I pulled
it sounds plausible.
Because I'd engaged in this debate prior to recording it, and so I was making notes at my girlfriend's place on her post-it notes, which are in very nice shade of pink. Because I won't debate. I did.
Okay.
Don't tell kassad.
When I was just bring it, kassad. I don't care. It was. I specifically also tracked versus real title contenders. I looked up like who's played who, like real title contenders in their playoff games. It came out to 68% of his playoff maps were against the real title contenders, which was the highest of anyone I tracked except Wonderful, who barely played playoffs. And yes, of course, ran circles around Senzu, who just I'm going to keep Duncan on.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Just had layup after layup in big events last year. Absolutely fraudulent top 20.
I do appreciate this guy just lives CS so much that, like, even when he's at his girlfriend, he's like, "Excuse me, honey, I've just got to." Anyway, here's Spinx.
Yeah, literally, do you have a pen?
Percentage of it. Hold up a second. I'll be there at dinner in a second. How many times did Mongols play in the play? Fuck, let's take a day off. You're having a family day at that point in time. Like, it's like okay. Anyway. And then the family's like, "He's still doing that CS thing in the other room. Like, it's a bit weird, isn't it?" It's like, yeah, but he says he's going to make a career out of it and everything.
That's what you need, though. I mean, if you really thinking about what this space needs, it is analysts that are actually going to just, in their free time, fight about these kinds of topics.
No, praise to it, Maui. Without naming names, probably the most underwhelming thing about broadcast work is there are some analysts who look like they burned out years ago and they just phone it in when they're at the event. So I actually appreciate the idea when someone's not being paid, they will still think about the game and try and come up with a cool angle. Like, I agree, you should be praised for that. But it is mad weird. If I was your girlfriend's dad, then I'd be like, yeah, I don't know about this one, We'll keep an open mind, but he's a little bit like a Senzu for me, a little bit overrated for what he's doing.
If you aren't fighting on anonymous boards or using aliases, then you're really not going hard enough.
Yeah, exactly.
This paint.
Exactly. Do you even care enough?
I don't do that. Do
you even care enough if you're not secretly flaming people and doing that? So anyway, speaking of flaming people, obviously everyone loves to argue about sports, don't they? Well, one thing that's unarguable is what a great deal Prize Picks have, because after you play your first $5 lineup, they will give you $50 worth of lineups to play. So it's actually really easy to get in and have some fun with Prize Picks. It's super quick. It's really easy to do. You don't have to be some expert about sports. Like, basically all you do is they give you stats projections. You just pick between 2 and 5 of them and you just say more or less, and it'll just be something simple like, will this 3-point shooter in the NBA have more than, say, 2 3-pointers in a game? You just think of the track record, you think of what you thought of the game, you even just do it if you want to just have fun. You pick more or less, you go and do that. Once you've done this, it's really simple. They've got loads of extra features. They've got all social components where you can just copy someone else's picks if you want and they're successful. You can show your friends what you're picking. You can do stuff like early payouts where if your player gets off to a hot start, you can actually cash out before the game even ends. They have loads and loads of features. They have stacks where you can pick the same player in multiple different categories if that's your favourite player or somebody you've just been boarded up on recently. So it's easy to play at Prize Picks. And as I said, download the Prize Picks app today and use code SNAKE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code SNAKE to get $50 in lineups after you play just your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Okay. We can all agree with that sentence, certainly. So, for the last section, which is the ugly, KingT, what is ugly right now?
Yeah, so this is usually we talk about MOUZ and we talk about them in a sense of, this isn't working, we need to make this change. This isn't working. And I've kind of hated that because I've got an immense amount of respect for the things they have achieved. Like, that's been a key part of my sort of conversations with a lot of people, is that it's just not easy. And then I love HLTV gave me the layup graphic when they showed the top 4s, like streaks of all time. And there's casually MOUZ last year sitting ahead of Liquid and all these era-defining teams. It was fantastic. But the problem is, I do agree there's a certain question you have to keep asking yourself, like, how do you take that next step? And for me, it's an ugly situation because there isn't one you can really take right now. I don't think there even really was one over the course of the last off-season year. There was all these rumors, these links with them and PR. I didn't really see how that would work, to be honest. Like, I didn't see that as a bona fide upgrade. This is going to propel you over ZywOo's Vitality. Like, I just didn't see it happening. But even now, as the season's progressing, I don't think there's going to be that opportunity for them to really upgrade until we get to the offseason and someone else does something bordering on stupid. Someone else gifts them a player, or someone else, for some reason, has created such a toxic idea of player in the same way they had when they bought Spinx from Vitality, that you could, as a lower budget org, MOUZ are not nothing, but they aren't, one of the very richest, very biggest, and historically wealthy orgs in CS. When they need that opportunity to manifest itself again, basically. So, for example, like if you had aspirations to get Alexi B, you need a full season of Navi being bad, and you need Navi to be like, at the end of it, yeah, you know what?
Right.
Ima did give us a 0.90 in every important map, but Alexi B was the IGL. Let's make him. Let's cut him. Let's put him on the bench again. And you'd be like, oh, as a community, we're like, oh, Alexi B. How many times now is it going to just not work? All of a sudden, MOUZ, they get that correct sort of environment set up for them to make that move, and that's exactly what they need him for, a firepower move. I don't think there's any move they can just make that's outright. This player's loved and respected and clearly high quality. Oh, we're going to outbid everyone for him. I don't think they can do that. They need things to get messy, things to get ugly for a player to kind of get tarnished in the eyes of the community before they can even get a chance to pick them up. So it's kind of an ugly point in that sense, where it's something has to go wrong for someone else for MOUZ to benefit and actually take that step.
I only really have theories for this one. I mean, I feel like for MOUZ, I think the biggest change. I mean, the thing is they're doing well right now. Obviously, they made the semifinals of Cluj. I still kind of point the finger most at Brolin. Actually, I think Brolin has kind of been underwhelming as an in-game leader. If I wanted to change anything, it feels like, I mean, there's rumors out there right now that Kerrigan, they could be looking at replacements for him. I don't think that Kerrigan is always a better in-game leader, but he might be the better captain for a MOUZ team that simply needs a little bit of a spark. I almost feel, in an objective sense of looking at results and looking at how the guy's calling, even the fragging output, which does matter at points when you're an in-game leader because you're playing in the server, you're not just a coach. I think that most metrics, Brolin has cleared him, except, I mean, T-side win rate actually was pretty bad for MOUZ at the end of last year, even though you may even argue that they had better pieces because they didn't really have, I mean, I'd say Torzi was better than Brokey, and anybody was better than Jacob. So I feel like if actually the chain reaction begins with FaZe exploring an option outside of Kerrigan, I'm not against a Kerrigan to MOUZ reunion. It would really just make this team a lot more interesting and engaging, and all of the complaints about MOUZ on the meta perspective of Auralists or no whatever, it's mostly because there's just flat personalities that aren't willing to really be themselves in front of an audience, and Kerrigan is anything but that. He wears his heart on his sleeve, he engages with the crowd, and it would make them a hometown favorite practically wherever they go. And I feel like that just a change in environment, even if tactically you might take a step back, even if individually Kerrigan might be worse than Brolin, I just need a different atmosphere for this team, and I think Kerrigan would easily bring that.
By the way, I'll give you the craziest angle of all. I was looking this up while you guys were talking all of last year, and bro, it is insane. Do you want to know something, Matt? This team actually, if you don't have to count win the top, they beat every single top team. They beat Vitality, Falcons. They even beat Furia when no one was beating Furia. But they beat every Spirit, but they beat every single elite team, Falcons, everyone. The problem is they just never won the events except for that one PGL that no one gives a shit about at the beginning. So the worst thing about them is, and especially by the way, if you put them in the group stage, they can beat literally every team in the world. Now the reason why that really sucks is this is why, unfortunately, I'm not with this like counter push that I notice from people now to be like, okay, like, here's where I agree with them. I do agree, like KingT said, you have to give them credit. When you've done a streak of that many top fours, and when, by the way, even when you've beaten all these top teams, you have to give someone credit that they can do it. My problem is that does absolutely imply you should be able to win the events. If you can already beat all these teams, you should be able to win any event in theory. They never win the event. So the real problem is this. I think there's two types of people. There's a type of person that thinks that we're being unfair, and MOUZ just isn't actually that good a team, and they're supposed to come third or fourth. That's them actually like hitting the absolute scene. The problem is I just don't believe believe that. Like, I have seen them in games without pressure play as good as anyone in CS, or play up to the level of anyone in CS. I mean, people forget they were actually the team. Falcons only did it a little bit at the end. They were the team in that first season last year when Vitality was unbeatable and never ever lost a series, who really did have them on the ropes once or twice. Like, there were a couple of times where they really at least were in position where you could, at a minimum, think, fuck, is Vitality going to lose the game? That never happened, aside from like that one game that Falcons had on that nuke game at Melbourne, basically. Aside from that, it was only MOUZ put them in that position. But I also agree. The problem is, this is why I think so many of us who are experts attack the fact that, like, we don't really care anymore that they make all the top fours. Because unfortunately, if you think it's really impressive, it's one thing to think it's impressive. You think it's, essentially, if you think the top fours justify making no roster move, that's where I have a problem. Because I noticed KingT didn't do that. He pointed out that they've had this amazing run, an all-time great run of deep placings, but you still have to make a move. Like, I'm sorry, you've had the roster too long now. Also, the fact that you've proven you can beat everyone, but then you don't win the events, that shows there's something wrong with the composition of the team, the leadership, the culture, whatever you want it to be. People can say choking, so maybe the sports psychology, whatever angle it might be. The problem is, I've always thought this, people normally don't want you to make roster moves in good teams because maybe their team can improve. I agree. At this point, there's nothing MOUZ is going to improve with this exact 5-man lineup and coach. Like, it's just going to be the rest of the scene gets worse or better. So I agree. Here's what's funny. This is one of the only teams I don't even have the move for. Like, on paper, part of me thinks, look, I would say IGL and AWP are the most obvious position to upgrade. But again, who do I get? Like, is Carrigan even available? Is Alexi B ever leaving NAVI? I don't think any AWPer that's joining is better than Torji, unfortunately. So I don't think you even have a choice there. I mean, you'd have to go to what, for me, it'd just be absurdly idiosyncratic, patented takes. Like, fuck it, throw Simple in there and see what happens. But I don't think that's happening. One, I don't think MOUZ can afford him. Two, the joke is he might himself be so delusional he doesn't want to join them. And then three, he'd probably eat those guys alive and spit out their fucking spines within a week, wouldn't he? Like, they'd probably never survive being in a room with Simple. So I actually genuinely, I'm with you. I don't know what move you make. My problem is just this. I think you just have to make a move. Whatever it is, even if it gambles being worse, I think you have to make a move, because to me, they don't live up to their potential. They're the most criminal offenders for not living up. Even the joke is, even Falcons, it feels like hits the ceiling more often. You know what I mean?
I want to give them till the end of this tournament. Actually, I just feel like there's a slightly. I've been got before. Don't get me wrong. I got at Krakow. I thought they were going to do better at that event. I thought they would at least push Vitality. But this one, I just think the way that Torzi exited after... You
say you don't drink the Kool-Aid. You guzzle it down every time. What you do is at the end when you throw it up, you're like, oh, I wish I'd done that Kool-Aid. And then you're delicious Kool-Aid.
Another thing is that obviously the teams that I am tasked to cover for professional broadcasts, I go through all of the YouTube stuff that they have. I go through their comms. I go through their vlogs. And in their vlogs, okay, I just wish that what we got on stage or in interviews from people like Yimpat is what is obviously happening when he's in his comfort zone. Like he said about Alexi in the vlog that he can't wait to clap them cheeks. And I was like, are you kidding? Like, are you kidding me? Like, what, dude, can we get a smidgen of that personality in any interview or anything? But they just all want to be too PR correct. You know, they want to be all just, they just don't, they're, I mean, think of it like this also. They're one of the youngest teams. I mean, average age is like 22. So Yimpat himself is still a teenager. Okay. So they're growing up, and that's, I kind of held out for Heroic actually for a really long time. They were the team that with Katie and Soroka is what I'm talking about, because they were so close, but then they ended up winning a couple trophies, some fairly impressive ones too. But then they obviously choked the big major moments. And I just feel like if you have a team that's still so close on the precipice of being an actual trophy lifting roster, you kind of can do what you said, Thorin, which is you're kind of hoping everybody else just gets a little bit worse as you continue to hold the faith and stay hungry enough that you're continuing to put in the work, because there is going to be a day or a time when Vitality do taper off. And if you can somehow maintain your level as Vitality are losing their 5 to 10%, then you might be the team that lifts the trophy. You might even just get an easy bracket one time. I mean, a couple teams have benefited from that. Like, think about the fact that Mongols, when they won their EWC, got to play Aurora in the grand final. Like, that was just like someone, it just has to win this game. And I think MOUZ is going to find themselves in that sort of position. And I feel like it's not impossible for me to think that they're a team that can just get lucky like that. I mean, I don't know if this is the tournament for it, but I I'm just kind of holding out because I feel like there might be an environment shift here as some of these players are maturing. Like it literally just feels like an
I'll give you another side though.
Server maturing.
The problem is that coin has another side which goes, they better hope that Falcons and Spirit and these teams don't get way better. Like if any of these teams ever make a move and go to the top and it's them and Vital, then they're never going to win. You know?
Yeah, but that's my pushback on a lot of the MOUZ changes talk. Is like, so I make a change, right? Let's say I do some nonsense move. I take PR, I put him in the team for Broline, I let Zershan call like everyone wants because he's the fake IGL behind the scenes sort of thing, like where everyone's like, it's Cyclone's team. Zershan does so much help with the calling, might as well make him IGL.
Yeah.
You get 2% better eventually, because initially it's a nightmare, right? You're just switching up a whole bunch of roles. It's not going to make sense for a little while. Let's say after 3 months, you've gotten 5% better. Probably haven't even caught Vitality. And then in that time, maybe Spirit figured it out, maybe Falcons have figured it out. And now there's 2 teams who are just so much more talented than you. You just don't have a hope in hell anyway of winning it. And that's why I kind of, it's negative, but I'm like delighted that they're able to make so many top 4s. And the Vitality win that was immediately followed by the utter drubbing they received from Spirit just kind of makes sense in that sort of regard. Like you overcame one Everest-level superstar on a crazy good team. You faced another insanely good player on a team that was playing some of its best CS that we'd seen basically the entire year, in that entire season, would be their best event. Yeah, you lost. You kind of have to just hang your head. Like you managed it once, but it's ridiculous to ask someone to scale Everest and go, all right, K2 now. Like, no, it's kind of tough. It's kind of like difficult to say this, but I think they just have to be happy with what they got right now. And unless, as I said, something ridiculous happens, someone makes a mistake, they can't get significantly better to the point where I think it matters.
I think you're just too kind. Like you're doing like, they have to climb. Everyone has to climb Everest in this analogy. All the top teams have to attempt to climb Everest.
Other teams have fucking people who can jump a mountain. Okay. There's no one on that. There's no Superman on this team.
Well, that's actually the problem. By the way, that's also a problem that I don't blame MOUZ for, but it is an issue. This is why CS isn't just a product you put on the server. The real problem is the actual performance of MOUZ as a squad in Counter-Strike for the last 3 or 4 years would actually justify them being considered one of the most important destinations to go to. But that it doesn't feel like that's ever been true, if you know what I mean. Like, essentially, why the bigger question here is that, which is what has gone wrong with MOUZ the org, that people like, why is it that Frozen's trying to join NAVI but not get back in MOUZ, like we were just saying earlier, you know what I mean? Like logically you'd think if you're all these, or Carrigan, why isn't Carrigan behind the scenes for the last 2 off seasons going, if I don't get the player I want, I'm off to join MOUZ as the IGL and I'll win the major? Like in a weird way, I ask this rhetorically because I don't really know the answers. I don't know what they can do, because that's the one area I do think they've failed, unfortunately. At the moment they take players and make them stars.
Lauren, what's your take on the aura discussion of MOUZ, or the aura list one? Because they just get bodied on all of their social media in the replies. They like every single I mean, because you don't see that with Vitality, you don't see that with Navi. Like these are prestigious organizations. You know, FaZe themselves have so much. I mean, there's prestige behind their name.
Yeah, of course.
So what do you think it is that has kind of put MOUZ in this entire, like, almost feels like an unsolvable position?
Put it this way,
they're just constantly getting owned
I
by
actually think with this specific lineup you can't do much of it, because unfortunately you'd have to go full WWE. Most of these players, they're not faking it, they are just chill people. Like they're just not actually very aggressive people or very bombastic. They actually are the people, which by the way, this is really cool for 1 or 2 players. Think of like Mezzy and Vitality. They can have the player who goes, look, I let my game speak for me, and that's great if you have 1 or 2 players, but then you need the dickhead guy who's like, I'm the best, I'm a shallow. Like the joke is, I'll give you an example that'll immediately show what I'm talking about. Even though he's had almost no chances to do it, Wrinkle has already had like 10 aura moments compared to all of MOUZ combined. Like he's already tried to claim he'll like smack fucking Monacy, or he'll play. Like at least he's actually gone for it. And by the way, we all believe it. The joke is no one even thinks Wrinkle's as good as Torshi, but you all believe that like he actually does think that. He's got a bit of cockiness and it gives him a bit of edge. It gives you a reason to care about that match, doesn't it? The real problem I think is this. First of all, in the big games, MOUZ does. Like here's the joke. They don't need to be worried about fucking K2 KingT. They need to worry about fucking KY and just lube up and fucking bend over and think of fucking top 4 streak and go, hey, well, at least I'm in the top 4. Oh God, Monacy, you are such a big time player. Oh my God, I wish we had a player like that. Oh, we don't. I'll tell you what, that top 4 though, whew, top 4. That's still pretty good. Tell you what, that's not the only fucking semi they're working with most of the time. Anyway, the point is, listen, they can't always get up for the big matches. So they not only need KY, they need fucking Viagra. There you go. They need it in terms of their attitude. They need their heart rate to go up a little bit. They need to really want to fuck. You know what, Maui? I told you on a past episode. Good dick. It's good dick. Well, I'll tell you what, these guys wouldn't know good dick if it was destroying them in a semi-final, because they have no fucking clue. No, I actually do think for real though that is a problem in their team. Like, it's why the joke is I'm going too far saying put Simple in, but actually I do think, results aside, one thing they would benefit from is one player that has like an edge to him. You know what I mean? That fans could hook onto, because even Spinx doesn't have that, by the way, because Spinx is actually kind of like a bit of a boring player. Just his arrogance is inside the server. It's not outside of it. He doesn't really make like edgy comments. In fact, by the way, he has barely even trash talk Vitality himself, even when they beat him. So I don't know. I know what you mean. I do think that doesn't help. They not only do lose in an unconditioned fashion and they never win the event, but then also you look at their players and you're like, who gives a shit, really? You know what I mean? Like, I like their players, but
we
don't really have personality.
So many players in the scene that it just felt like who they were outside of the server was a caricature of who they were in the server. I mean, so many of those. I mean, James a good example today. It just seems like he's always very deliberate with everything that he does, trying to always maintain like a very flat heart rate. You know, he's just drinking tea in his room when he's playing online matches. It was fun to watch. And like some of the old guys like Scream, you know, it's like perfect hairdo, perfect one taps. You know, there's all these little aspects that made them larger than life. But unfortunately, I mean, I said this on the desk today. I mean, Thorin kind of brought up. I mean, not Thorin. Richard brought up the whole like aura conversation lightly on it. And I was just kind of like, they're almost too relatable that they're just normal guys playing Counter-Strike. They're just guys.
It's the sort of thing where, like, I think actually, Jimmy, you should retweet more stuff. Like, that would be better.
yeah, I agree.
Imagine you lose to him and then he just retweets that. Like, you're like, oh, for crying out loud. Like, he's not checking strats on his phone between maps. Like, that would be at least some form of entertainment.
Also, you've also nailed it when you said the comment he said earlier. It also, by the way, I've always said this about trash talking. The best example ever is Conor McGregor. When Conor McGregor was a very dangerous fighter, his trash talking was super amplified and it was amazing. When he then just kept doing it for 10 years while he wasn't very good, it just made it like, that's just like wrestling, mate. You just saying a bunch of shit you don't even believe. So my problem with that Yimfat one is like, we're going to clap their cheek. You get more claps in arenas than fucking people doing their like lifetime achievement award, homie. You are clapped every tournament, like. That doesn't even, and you're just whack at the moment anyway. Like, that doesn't even work as trash talk because you're not very good right now. You have to have an element of edge. You have to be a bit dangerous to do that. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a move, guys, because it can't happen now. But you know what? You know, there's the whole move with Infuria that if Furia fails, maybe Fallen just retires. And at that point, by the way, who the fuck knows what happens to that roster? I'll tell you the move that you want. This would solve everyone's problems. You KingT MOUZ. There you go. This guy has mad arrogance, fucking ego, talk shit every time he's on top. Like, and he'd also be a very good player in their team, I think. I think there's a move right there for you. A year from now, you KingT MOUZ, make it happen. Do it.
Okay. I like it. I mean, it just gives them some personality.
Yeah.
Also, I'm a Yakindar fan. I'm a big Yakindar.
I actually think it'd be a good move for both people. I'm assuming, obviously, in the future, if they do have Fallen and Fury, who knows how good the team is? Do they even keep the international roster? I don't think it's as crazy as people think. Everyone acts like it's a lock now. Anyway, let's go now to Maui's ugly point, is it?
Yes, my ugly point too, yeah. I mean, I think it's a team that's in a similar position to what we just talked about with MOUZ. I mean, off the back of, and even actually, funnily enough, it's funny that we do back-to-back teams that one just beat the other. I mean, this is just about NAVI. I mean, NAVI, say what you will about.
I've even just realised, guys. Why are we so bad in CS? We just spent like 20 minutes banging on MOUZ. They just won the match today as well. Like, I even did it on my last show. On my last show, when they actually qualified to the playoffs, I did a whole thing on Countpoints. Like, yeah, but it's not really good enough the way they qualified. They can't win, guys. They actually just can't. They can only win the tournament. That's it. That's all you can do at this point.
Yeah, you're either lifting a trophy or you're
sorry.
Bum.
We're just hitting on you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, NAVI though are to me a position that's almost the opposite of MOUZ, where they get the fanfare, they have the the crowds behind them.
Yes.
I mean, today they were just roaring for them, for EMA. Obviously, it's EMA in Romania, but even hearing Navi fans across the world, legitimately everywhere I've been, and Navi's been playing with a crowd in front of them, they are fans of Navi. I don't think there's really, I don't even know if there's ever been a time when I remember them being they're not a booed team. They're not a team that, like today, MOUZ were totally booed. Paravision was a booed team. No one's booing Navi. There's just too much esteem behind the name. But regardless of that fact, they're in a position where Blade mentioned that he thinks that they can win trophies this season. I'm a little bit more optimistic on that statement than a lot of people, but I'm not very optimistic on it. I still think it's a little bit on the delusional side versus what's actually likely for them, or really what they should even expect to achieve. And I think that right now it's just the reason I put it in ugly is because it's also pretty tough to say what should you do with Navi. That's my big question, because I don't think Blade is just not an expendable piece. I would never look to him to swap out. However, when looking at some of their recent vetoes, I would say that he's worth drawing into some question about how he's doing as a coach right now, because they picked Nuke against Mongols. They lost that one. They picked Mirage versus Aurora. They lost that one. They picked Mirage again versus MOUZ. They lost that one. So there was a 3-game streak of them not winning any of their own map picks. And even when you go back to Krakow, they picked Mirage against Fury. They lost that. They picked Mirage against Spirit. They lost that. And it's like they're right now in the middle of reckoning with the fact that their Mirage is not what they thought it was. In fact, on top of that, they lost it today 13-6 to MOUZ in the quarterfinals. So that map has just unfortunately escaped them. And I feel like when I watch them, on the tactical side, it doesn't feel like it's the freshest anymore. Just seeing them try to constrict the A bomb site over and over again, as teams kind of know the typical steps of a Navi round. So that's something where I am a little bit concerned about how Blade's running the team, or Alexi, or how they're mid rounding. I also feel like the one of the toughest conversations is that Wonderful just feels like he's kind of regressed as a player, as an opper in particular. He sometimes still puts up weirdly good numbers, but then he gets it. You look and it's actually he got most of it done with the rifle. But then when you look back at his opping, it's just like, where was the guy that for the last couple months of 2025? I was thinking that this guy's gonna have a huge 26, but at this point, he's one of the lower rated oppers in the scene for the year thus far on top 10 teams, top 20 teams. So I just think there's a lot of questions that I have for Navi and where they move forward, and I'm not giving a specific answer in this one. That's why I'm just bringing it up as a topic.
Yeah, they're a team that has, as you said, a lot of sort of admiration. An org that's got this great history, and a lot of people are fans. Originally some of it's related to Simple, but even before Simple, they were a pretty big org with a decent sort of fan base. But Simple is a big part of it, especially for the modern audience. And then, obviously the most recent international iterations, one of which won a major. Like there's a lot of fans who are going to be fans of Navi specifically, and yet they're just awful. Like as an org, they're supposed to be a pretty big deal. They've made big moves, they've had big names, and they've had big results, and they've just not been very good this year. They weren't exactly great last year, but that kind of got swept under the rug in a lot of ways because they had key moments, like just little flashpoints, I guess you could call them, where they popped off. The majors, the colognes, they were able to make the top 6 or top 4 run, and in those games, Makaze was spectacular, and you forgot him as a bum, and it was all like, it'll fade into the background, because you're like, oh, this flashy thing in front of me is awesome, and they're super successful. But that's just papered over a lot of cracks. Their Mirage hasn't looked the freshest for a while. Like, it's right now looking especially dire because they're losing it, but it hasn't looked like the sort of unbreakable bastion that it was originally for this Navi side. When they did revolutionize the meta, everyone was copying all of their util sets and protocols and how they were approaching map control and how they then, scaled off that and executed. Everyone was copying it to the point where, every team down to tier 3 is running the same Mirage at one point last year. So no, of course, it now to this day, it looks like almost outdated. It looks like they're just running it back over and over again, trying desperately to get something out of it. And there's a reason why, today they pick Ancient and allow Mirage to be a third. They no longer see it themselves as the same sort of map. So yeah, they are stale in a lot of ways on that map specifically, but across the pool, Ancient, they still play fairly well, I find, because it's a map that does benefit from a truly hard opener. on the T side and other map control pieces working in tandem. Like, you really can work the map in a lot of ways at the same time. You can set things up quite efficiently with limited utility, but just bodies. And that seems to work really well for them. But they just aren't a very well put together side right now. Like, if Wonderful's not going to be hitting his shots, and Imma requires the most resources of anyone to get a multi-kill in the world, plus Mikaze's streaky, I'm like, already I've got too many ifs and buts. Then Bit cannot seem to find his consistency. Yeah, this team's just not good. It's just not good. It's not even like, oh, they're okay, or they have moments. No, they're just not good. And we've seen it here. They make playoffs. It's an impressive playoff berth to secure, because they do technically beat G2. They beat Aurora. These are like big names, one of which made playoffs, another one of which has playoffs expectations, big names. The fact that they just come into playoffs and then just get bodied on those two maps by MOUZ, it kind of just highlighted the gap. Like, they're so far from a team of MOUZ's stature, and MOUZ is a team we rag on all the time. Navi aren't even in sniffing distance. Yeah, this team's in a horrible spot, and it's probably a reason why we're going to continue having speculative talks about where LXCB ends up. I mean, the Blade talk is also justifiable, even if it does feel very far-fetched in terms of the actual reality. You're starting to get the sort of the cracks showing again, but even at the leadership level in this side. So no, I'm greatly concerned for Navi in terms of what their future holds, because I don't rate a lot of the pieces on the team, let alone, believe in their collective to do something right now. They don't look good.
Unlike when you look at teams like MOUZ, Falcons, where it's like you're actually struggling to really nail down what the issue is. One game it's this problem, then it's another problem. Overall, the trend is, yes, you don't win in certain moments. So the worst thing about Navi is this. I think it is actually the easiest team to analyse why they don't ever win tournaments or make finals, and the best case scenario is a semi-final. I'll give you a rundown of factors that are all even like objective and provable. So here's an example. If people don't know, one thing we have to do in Counter-Strike, and sadly I have a lot of sympathy for teams and coaches, you do not ever get the messaging on this early enough to actually factor in, but it's a massive factor, is the map pool absolutely will determine how good your team can be. Counter-Strike is not a game where we all start at zero, we all try all 7 maps, and we just find out we're good on them. Certain cores of players and certain styles of IGLing and styles of play work better on certain maps, and I'm sorry, if you'd have known after that major, Train is leaving and Anubis is coming back, you never keep the same roster if you're Navi. Because first of all, they were really good on Train. That was one of the best maps. That and their Mirage were their home maps. And then they were also, they'd never made Anubis work when they tried to last year. So you take out one of their best maps, then as pointed out, first, by the way, the Anubis comes in, they're still not good on it. And then even worse, now their Mirage has completely fallen off a cliff. You guys pointed out, it's only the last couple of series they don't pick the Mirage. They are 1-6 on Mirage this year. And the one win was against Astralis, by the way. So they're just not even a relevant team on what used to be, even last year, still they were one of the better Mirage teams in the world. So right now in the veto, they have nowhere to go at all. There is no right answer, Maui. When you're saying like they're picking Nuke into Mongols, yeah, because they can't pick the Mirage there either. Like, and then when they have to, even worse, leave the Mirage to decide, then they just lose every decider, because all these teams are better on Mirage too. Mongols, fucking MOUZ, all these teams will get you on that map. Then I'll add in this other detail. Here's where last year, I hope people now appreciate how incredibly unfair they were to Wonderful, because Wonderful actually was pretty fucking good last year. And now what you realise when he is having a nightmare beginning of the year is, mate, when you take away like the sorts of shots he did, they have nothing. Like, by the way, he's one of the reasons why their T-side Mirage is ass now. It's fucking terrible. Because unfortunately, the last year I actually think was probably the best year of his career. I think he just got slept on because Navi, the team, wasn't as good. Bro, he has had a really hard time at the beginning of this year, and it's meant their team has very little going for them. Because Mikaze was never like a big production guy. He was more like you see a bit of impact here and there, and you hope he improves, So the real reason why I sort of agree, I even think Blade gets criticism for this, is because Blade is still out there on the fucking street corner playing, those guys when you go to the shopping area, KingT, where it's like next to like all the fucking TK Maxx and fucking Burger King. There's always that fucking guy who's bosking, and I don't have a problem with bosking. I have a problem with this. You only know one tune! Stop fucking playing the same tune on that record. I heard that 2 hours ago. Like, get a fucking repertoire, come with like 10 different tracks, get a fucking trance song and get the melody for that, you mad fuck. Don't just pick some medieval music from the 16th century that you keep doing this. unless a fucking snake's going to come out and entertain me, that's not enough. So here's what sucks about Blade. He is still doing those interviews, guys, that are essentially the gist of them go, just trust me, we can still get this team to the level it can win the trophy. And it's like, I'm sorry, Blade, I have believed you many, many times, bro. I gave you the chance when you had the simple roster first and Gambit was better. I gave you the chance when you had the roster that was last in 2024. That was mega. I gave you loads of chances. You have worked some miracles, but even you can't make this 5-man roster ever win another tournament. It'll never happen. By the way, I don't even need to be kind here. You know, I am Atlanta, where they're like on paper the second or third, but they won't even win that tournament either. Like you're not even a sniff to beat Vitality in a BO5. Like no chance. So sadly, that's also why I'm so out on Na'Vi. I even think, by the way, if you made a roster move after that last major, that was the perfect swan song for that core to end on. They all came together for one last run. They did a really great job. They held a bunch of teams accountable. Sadly, they didn't make the final. We'll never see that height again, mate. This roster's cooked. And I'm with you as well, KingT. It used to be before, I don't know who to kick when they were still pretty good. Now it's like, kick almost anyone, mate. It doesn't even matter. At this point, you almost couldn't go wrong. And I'll tell you one last thing that makes this extra ugly, boys. Because I keep bringing this up, but people keep forgetting it. The team we're all loving foot was Navi Junior. You had a whole team of players to pick from. You do realise, think about academy teams. You don't even have to keep the player if it's an academy team. If I told you tomorrow, Maui, right, we're going to go back in a time machine to like just before they became Foot, right, and we're going to tell Blade, keep the squad for the rest of the season. And then in the off season, we can now make the following moves. We could bring like Demon up, or we could bring up fucking Jogs. You'd at least gamble for a few events, you know. Let's see how it works out. Maybe one of them turns out to be us. If they don't, great, academy team, they go back. The idea you got an academy team, which in theory, or it's an academy squad, was one of the best teams ever, and the only player we took was Mauisnake. That now looks silly, unfortunately, because the joke is, at this point in time, like, if things keep going the way they're going now, boys, Foot and Navi are going to meet in the rankings. They're headed on a collision course in the rankings at like 14th or something. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, they're destined to meet. Oh, God, man, I'm looking at VRS right now, because in Valve ranking, you know, is a little more fixed. It doesn't fluctuate quite as violently, but like, yeah, if it'd like to load, which it won't, okay, whatever. They probably are going to see each other around 11th or 12th. There's not even 14th because Foot are climbing and Navi are slowly falling. This playoff berth does help them a bit. Who do you cut? Well, almost anyone. Even as a Mauisnake fan, a guy who profiled him, loved his game on what was Foot in Navi Junior. You know, it was a very different Navi Junior, Foot, whatever, sort of style of play. Like, they had a very different approach to the game, but they still had a pretty cool system with this like punch counter punch combo with Mauisnake and then Crabney and Demon. If you can bring some of those players up, like even 6 months ago, I say towards the end of last year, when they're not quite the same team they are now, as you mentioned, I'm taking at least two. And because of VRS, I can't do more, but I'm taking at least two. I would be happy to even risk a third. I would, if Wonderful's not going to be consistent, I might as well have a guy who's inconsistent, but really bold and surprisingly good with a rifle in late rounds. Give me symmetry. Like, he's a nutcase.
That's the worst player on the team. He's the worst player on the team
outright. Still make a change.
No.
Make a fucking change. If Wonderful's not going to hit the sitters, might as well take a guy who doesn't give himself sitters. Symmetry doesn't know what a sitter is. He never gives himself
I would even been down for you to say Krabeni for Alexi B. I would have been down for it. But Cemetery, that's a step too far. That's the weakest player. on the team.
I'd bring him in for Imma on a rifle. Just to have someone else in that spot.
Well, that's a mad hater angle, but okay. Imagine if you're Imma, like, fuck me. Why fuck me? What did I do? I'm like, okay.
No, I've been saying fuck Imma for honestly a very long time. But
now here's the thing, though, boys.
I've never seen a faker multi-kill percentage.
Speaking of, should people make roster moves? We have one more for you. They have a market that says Nocries. Yeah, that guy who's like the Mongolian / Buryat / lived in Russia, but now he's in North America that people thought cheated last year. The market says by the 30th of June, so we're only a few months out, will he sign for a pro CS2 organization? Now, I'm just going to say, I assume pro CS2 organization is fairly wide berth, but even so, essentially the idea is, does he go pro instead of just saying as like a Pog wonder? And that's not that far away. Now, here's the thing. At the moment, the market says 28% chance according to Trent, so they're saying it won't happen. But even so, I actually think 28% is higher than I thought it would be. So I'm wondering where you guys are at. Like, was that a story where it just remains something from last year that was like a curiosity? Does he ever actually join the team? Remember, in theory, I'll also add, he actually is more viable than people realise. One, he could in theory join Mongolian teams. Two, as far as I know, I've been on the stream, he speaks Russian. He could actually be on a Russian team in theory. And then thirdly, if he lives in North America's a fairly weak region. So it's not like he has to, like, you know, join a specific team. In theory, the world is his oyster if people care. So what do you boys think? Does he join? Is this a good number? What do you think? Do we see Nocries in pro play, KingT?
Where's our number again?
28% at the moment.
Oh, honestly, I'm taking that pick right now. It's only 28% because the options are there, as you mentioned, but more importantly, the one option, the North American option, depends on where the line for pro is.
Yes.
Because there are rosters that are salaried in North America that go through turmoil and changes and potentially could just take an absolute flyer on someone. So in that sense, I do think it's not a bad sort of prediction to make that someone will want to test him at some point. I mean, assuming the FaZe stats maintain and he keeps putting up like little POV demo sort of videos that people are really excited by. Assuming that all remains, someone I think will most likely take that risk in the North American scene. I think the Russian scene is a bit of a reach because they have their own pool of like absolutely nuts Russian speakers that they don't need to go try and get this guy out of the States. But I think an A team it's not impossible, especially seeing as they are, you know, setting the bar kind of arbitrarily. Like pro, like who's pro? Depending on the teams that count.
It says in the rules. It says in the rules that of this prediction that it's any team that just fields a salaried Counter-Strike roster.
Okay.
So
that's vast.
I think that's pretty wide. Because the reason I bring Wildcard is that. Like Wildcard is literally, if Wildcard got Nocries, that seems plausible. Like I don't know why.
ChatGPT would like that one.
I mean, that's true. Yeah, ChatGPT probably would ping what Nocries as being a hyped prospect and that he's a surefire win for them, and he should probably IGL too. No, I'm just kidding. And moves her. So yeah, whatever they did with MHL being IGL or whatever. I mean, I think that the chance here is pretty low. I mean, I'm also gonna spoil the segment here a little bit. I guess the sponsor segment or whatever is that. But spoil it as in give some details. I heard that Nocries actually got 1, maybe 2 tryouts with tier 1 teams, and they were relatively unimpressed with him. So I think that's probably more to do with communication or team play or just, playing out, like knowing how to play various situations that you would expect. If someone went through the gauntlet of tier 3 CS to tier 2, they probably would have ironed out some of those how to play off of teammates effectively sort of situations, whereas Nocries is just raw talent. But I mean, I don't see a reason why he shouldn't be joining a team like the ones I had mentioned, at least as an opper. I mean, I think when I watched his stuff back when the whole Nocries drama was abound, his opping was substantially better than most things I'm seeing in North America right now, which is an indictment on the region, sure, but also there was a reason he was hyped up. He was just extremely skilled.
I'll just say as well, like that's the other thing that I found weird about this even being like an impetus is, to me, this market would be way better if it was like in fucking November or whatever it was last year, whenever that whole drama was. That's when there was this whole thing of like, is this like a super talent? As far as I know, most people don't even think that anymore. That's why I actually sort of agree. 28% I don't think it's very high. I would go no. I would say no on this one. Even though, in theory, it's super wide, he could join any team. I get the sense that like this guy's just going to chill playing Pogs his whole career and it's just not going to be a thing. It's just going to be a curiosity.
Yeah. The other thing about this is, is that last I had heard, he was going to school. Like he moved to New York to go to college or something like that, and he was very focused on studying. And so the problem is that even though his skills would clearly fit a team like I mentioned, Wildcard or Marsborn or something like that, it's that I don't think he wants to leave school unless he gets some real serious tier 1 offer. Like I think anything beneath, say, an M80 or an NRG, I don't think he's really that interested in that. These are little bits and pieces I've collected over the last handful of months, just getting fed NA little sources and whatnot. But I think he's pretty locked in on school. I don't think he's jumping at the opportunity to just play for any team that's not a top 2 NA contender.
All right. Here's the thing, boys. For the final take of the show, my ugly is going to be one that is actually mental. The problem is, I could do this on the other show, but it'd just be weird with him here. So I'm going to do. Listen up, boys. And obviously, we're all adults. Be careful how you tread. I live in a minefield, so I'm okay. I can sense where the mines are. You guys figure out for yourself if you want to wade in. Even though kassad on Hot Take Point Made did it as he's finally learned the meta Maui. He's learned where it doesn't have to just be harsh things you believe. You put a little bit of silliness and some spice on it and make it more hyperbolic, and it makes it more fun. Essentially, his main take, by the way, was like they need to fire Zonic, and Zonic's having a negative attitude, and Nico's like isn't feeding the cult. But to make it spicy, he said they have to hire him, and then if kassad joins as the coach, then he guarantees they win the major. Which is again like, you know what? He learned. The boy actually learned the better of how this fucking shit works. He actually did adapt over time. He took both a real opinion he has, combined it with something entertaining, hyperbolic that he doesn't totally mean, and then packaged it all, and then let us pick it apart. That's actually exactly how that show's supposed to work. Here's what I'm going to say is the ugly point. I'm not actually even trolling, where it doesn't actually have to be Falcons. But I actually do think, and you'll see why I've put this in ugly, I actually do think if I look at the scene, and I look at a lot of these different teams that have like good players, but they lack like a bit of spark, or I think of teams like Team Liquid or MOUZ even, where sometimes they either lack a bit of spark, or people aren't totally held accountable for losing, or in the case of Team Liquid, they even seem like they need to kick up the arse, or someone to be a little bit harsher with them, and to sort of not be like, oh well, we'll get them next time, team huddle, yeah, on 3 team, go. And then you just go and do the same thing. Low key, I actually do think, this reason why I've picked it as ugly is I think kassad could actually be a good coach in a bunch of these teams. I actually do think he's one of those rare people who has the tenure in CS. And it's not bravado if people don't know. That actually is how he is off camera, by the way. The difference is, I'm clever enough at how I know how media works, is I make it lovable and like, oh, what a rascal that kassad is. Obviously, you all hate him when he's on fucking Twitter on his stream, don't you? You all fucking can't stand how hard his takes are. But the point is, he isn't faking it. He is actually that kind. All the things he says, he would actually do, by the way. He would hold people accountable. He would have hard conversations with star players. If you're the IGL and you're fucking up, he's not just going to let you get away with it a million. The reason I put it in ugly, though, is we all know the reasons why he's not going to get hired to any of those teams, though. A part of it's himself, and I get it that he sort of realised that part of his career is gone, and so he's sort of sending it on social media. He doesn't care anymore. If people don't know, he actually quite literally makes a whole living doing like sports betting, and he's very successful at it, and he's very diligent at it. So as far as I know, he's sort of like a made man where he doesn't ever actually have to go and be a coach, or he doesn't have to ever be an analyst. He can just choose to do whatever he wants and tweet whatever the fuck he wants. So the reason I put it in ugly is I don't think it can ever happen. I feel like for political, for fucking social reasons, I even think fans would hate on it. I don't think it'll ever happen, but I actually do think, if not literally kassad, I think that sort of coach is somewhat missed in the modern day. I do think a lot of coaches now, to me, strike me as like an overqualified demo analyst who just suggests to players and IGLs what to do, and then when they lose, the sports site guy comes in, and then, I don't know what some of these coaches do, you know what I mean? Like, I actually do feel like coaches, I want them to be accountable, I want them to be like defining the personality of the team and the style. So that's one thing I think in his career, I won't make the same joke, but same thing my boy Zeus used to do before he began fucking interfacing with the apocalypse or some shit like that, whatever he's doing. We all know he's also off the reservation. So what do you guys think? I picked it as an ugly. If not kassad, someone like a kassad, I think we actually do need coaches like that. I don't think there are any though anymore. Thoughts? KingT?
It's a hard sell in one way where as the scene gets ever younger, that style that's kind of abrasive, confrontational, direct, which I think is perfectly fine for a coach.
Yeah.
Coming from guys, I spent a lot of time in traditional sports. I still follow a lot of traditional sports. I don't think that style that was very successful there necessarily would work in CS right now, with a lot of the PR reasons, the type of people that you'd interact with. Like, a lot of them are younger, sort of borderline children, not actually children, but as everyone complains, society gets softer. The age of childhood seems to extend. Like, I think there's a lot of factors that make it kind of tough to be that abrasive and successful in a team. And that's why a lot of teams, I think, also have gone the route of a sports psychologist, and everyone, speaks the Falcons way instead of being uber, like, in each other's faces. So I think there are some limiting factors in that sense. Could he work, though, on a team that's got more aged pieces who need to be really whipped into shape? Yeah. I do think a Falcons type team was the perfect example, like, especially if you don't think about the Kioske lineup. Like, maybe Kioske is the exception in terms of who the players are. They're all older. they're all to a certain extent established, and in some cases need to be reined in. And so he would fit well. It's just the majority of opportunities are not going to be like that. They're going to involve a lot of younger players, less experienced players, less self-assured players, and where having that sort of influence may be difficult for them to deal with in a way that they haven't been, and something they've not been made used to, because they have just come flying up from relative obscurity super quickly. It's not like they spent 4 years in the way the NFL players would have in college,
Yes.
Getting pushed and seeing if they can actually live through that experience before they ever get to the very top of the game with all the money, with all the fame and the accolades. I mean, there's elements of that filtering down now with NIL, but you know what I mean. That's the point. I think it's just not a scene that necessarily fits his style in the majority of cases.
Two aspects to this. One is that, yes, the scene is indeed too woke for kassad. The second is that we admittedly Thorin and I ruined kassad. We absolutely rotted his brain so much that
He's addicted to hot takes now, he is, isn't he? We all are on some level, that's the problem.
He's just addicted to hot takes. Yeah, he's just addicted
The
to
problem
drama.
is when there's like a mode of thinking that when you turn it on to craft hot takes, you can never turn off. You know what I mean? Like once it's on now. It's just too late at that point.
So I don't even think I'm making hot takes half the time anymore. And
Right.
people are like, I like, Maui's baiting or whatever.
Okay.
I'm like, no, I'm actually just giving pretty much raw opinions most of the time. And I have a show where I make even hotter takes. But for the most part, the things I say on the desk, and even the things I usually say on Twitter, there are some jokey things, don't get me wrong, but those are pretty much sincere.
Yeah.
So
No, but I have a similar vibe because people always say I'm like some master rage baiter. It's like you actually overestimate me. I would believe all that shit. Like that's the worst part is I can pass a lie detector. I believe all that shit. Yeah. I do, which is whack according to you, but I think it's authentic, whatever that means.
Exactly. If you don't agree with every favorite is going to win every single time, and everybody is just on a flat line of just whatever level of form they're on, they are going to continue that forever. Then you're crazy. You're the crazy one. But going out on a limb and having even a light prediction in one direction or other that's against that grain just is being called rage.
Also, by the way, one thing I will say though, indirectly, even though we are doing all these takes somewhat authentically, the genius of that show is because we are just machine gunning crazy takes. It means every now and then, like that fluke one where I got Spirit winning that major, it means every now and then when you get one that looks super sick only in isolation though, like, holy fuck, he read the Matrix. It's like, yeah, I also got like 700 things wrong after that, but doesn't matter. I did say that on camera one time. Did say that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I also appreciate the way you phrased that. Instead of saying kassad is not appropriate for the modern coaching for players, you were like, the scene is too woke for kassad. I like that. You've even done that as a hot take. That's good. I like it.
The scene is too woke for kassad now. It's true. He would never last on a team like MOUZ.
I agree though with you, KingT though. One last thing I would say is, I actually did say this to kassad himself after his ridiculous statement that they win the major. I just basically said, it's not even that I disagree. I actually do think the things you bring are necessary. The problem is though, I actually do think in the modern day, and I think this even applies to sports now, I just don't think they let people coach that way in way, unfortunately. Like I do think young superstars just refuse to be sort of told off. They don't. Their joke is a modern superstar in sports and esports has that vibe. Like, you're not my dad, It's like, yeah, but they are your boss. Like, that is what the coach's job is. It doesn't matter how good you are with the mate. I mean, you guys said it about Monacy. I think Monacy's unbelievably talented, but absolutely someone should every now and then go, what the fuck are you doing there though? Like, that's just a basic mistake you made there, mate. It's not about skill. Like, you have to be accountable too if you're the superstar player. You're not really like above it all. You're not the god emperor.